to start off the weekend then. A fair amount of cloud around. If we do see any brighter spells, that's likely to be the lee of high ground, perhaps the northeast of Scotland, northeast of England. There's still some rain and drizzle on the cards, feeding in from the west, this turning heavier later on Saturday. And we could even still see some heavier spells across parts of Scotland by the time we reach the afternoon. But looking at those temperatures, it is a much milder start to the weekend.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Friday, the 29th of November. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Charlie Peters.
And this is just under 2 hours' time. MPs will vote on assisted dying for the first time in nearly a decade. The Commons is packed with MPs in a heated debate.
Both pro and anti-assisted dying protesters are currently gathered outside Parliament to prepare for the outcome, which is predicted to be on a knife edge. We'll be there live.
Heidi Alexander is appointed Transport Secretary following the resignation of Louise Hay. It was revealed she misled the police a decade ago when she made a false report her mobile phone had been stolen. We're live on Downing Street.
And the BBC says it has robust processes to deal with complaints as Greg Wallace quits MasterChef following claims of misconduct. But the former MasterChef host has thanked his fans for their support.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
And, well, if you are out here Black Friday shopping, I'm getting a bit of a dancing lesson from the elves here at Hamleys. So why not come along? But, of course, we will be talking about how much people are spending. I've lost time here at Black Friday here in the UK. Stay with us.
Well, Charlie, I think we're getting away quite lightly here, really. We could be dressed as elves or a fairy or whatever your choice would be.
Yes, of course. I'm enormously jealous. I'd love to be Santa's little helper today.
Would you? Well, you can be Santa. You can be my little helper. I'll be your little helper. We can help one another out.
We'll do that.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's look. I mean, at least I'm wearing the right colour.
I think he's going to be doing that the whole time in between his live hits, I think. I mean, he'll certainly keep warm today. There's no doubt about that.
But there are some great deals out there for Black Friday. Have you got anything yet?
Not yet, but this is an important time to prep for that all-important Christmas shopping. I've been known to do it on a bit of a Christmas Eve panic.
Have you?
But, I mean, we may learn what I might be getting for my nearest and dearest this
Don't
afternoon.
give anything away.
Based on what
You're not
Carson
one of those. You're not one of those blokes who rushes into the petrol station.
No.
Are you sure?
No, I promise. That's going to be beneath me. I'm actually presenting on Christmas Day, so I've got to make sure I've got gifts for people working here on that day especially.
OK.
And that will not be a petrol station job.
No. Well, yeah, but it better not be. As I said, not as people you work with.
An extremely bleak business.
Well, what about you like that? Are you ready? Have you got? I mean, it's not long now, is it?
No.
Christmas is really not long, and this isn't about us two. This is about you and your views, what you think. Huge topics to talk about today. Obviously, assisted dying is really important one. We've got some amazing people to talk to on both sides of this debate with some very emotive stories, because no matter what you think, it is about emotion as well as what the politicians are saying. So if you want to get in touch and have your say, please do visit gbnews.com/your say. But first, it's time for the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Dawn, Charlie, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. It's just after midday. The top story this lunchtime, it is that MPs are debating a historic bill today to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales, sparking a sharp division in the Commons. Current UK laws ban any form of assisted dying, but today's decision could pave the way for change. Kim Leadbeater, the MP leading that charge, opened today's debate with a plea for choice, for autonomy and dignity in death. However, opponents are warning it's too big and too flawed to fix. Meanwhile, campaigners on both sides of the debate have gathered outside Westminster as MPs face that free vote on the issue. The Commons has until 2:30 this afternoon to vote, with the outcome at this stage still unclear, as many MPs, including the Prime Minister himself, haven't yet revealed their stance. Well, Rebecca Wilcox, the daughter of campaigner and broadcaster Dame Esther Ranson, who herself is terminally ill, has been urging MPs to rethink their choice. Take a listen.
We're a nation of compassionate, kind people, and this bill has compassion and empathy and safeguards as its cornerstones. It couldn't be more carefully set out to protect the vulnerable, to protect those of reduced capacity, but most importantly, to give people choice at the end so they don't have to have a death that leaves their family traumatised and makes them worry for the rest of their lives, however long it is.
Well, as we've heard in the last few minutes, Downing Street has announced that Heidi Alexander is the new Transport Secretary. That follows the resignation of Louise Hay. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today and worked as Sadiq Khan's Deputy Transport Mayor between 2018 and 21. Well, Louise Hay's cabinet resignation, that's Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, came after it emerged last night that she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she's gained nothing from that incident. Greg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from MasterChef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over the last 17 years. The BBC broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people making claims accusing him of using sexualised language on the programme in 2011. Production company Banner UK says it's launching an external review with Greg Wallace fully cooperating during that investigation. His lawyers insist those claims, though, are entirely false. A man has been charged after an 8-year-old girl and her father were injured in a double shooting in West London. 32-year-old Jazz Reid from Kensington is facing 2 counts of attempted murder, along with firearms charges after the incident in Ladbroke Grove last Friday. He's due in court today, while detectives from the Met's Specialist Crime Command are leading their investigation and urging anyone with any information to come forward. Irish rap group Kneecap has won its legal battle against the UK government after being denied a £15,000 funding award. Kneecap argued the decision was discriminatory, with members of the group calling it an attack on artistic culture and the Good Friday Agreement. The controversy reportedly stemmed from a provocative poster for their 2019 tour titled Farewell to the Union. At the time, a government spokesperson said it was hardly surprising they wouldn't fund those opposed to the UK. But at Belfast High Court today, the government conceded the refusal was unlawful. Staying in Ireland, where voting is underway in the general election there, polls open until 10 o'clock tonight. It's a tight race, with the top three parties all hovering around 20% in support, according to the latest polls. Over 3 million voters will decide the makeup of Ireland's Parliament, with 174 seats up for grabs. That's more than ever before. Sinn Féin's leader Mary Lou McDonald has fielded more candidates this time, though aiming to form a government without the two traditional powerhouses. An exit poll at 10 p.m. will offer the first glimpse of what Ireland's next government could look like. Russia is waging a staggeringly reckless campaign of sabotage across the UK. That's according to Britain's MI6 chief Richard Moore. In a speech in Paris, he warned that Putin's actions are not just aimed at Ukraine, but at threatening European and transatlantic security. He's also highlighted Russia's nuclear threats. He says they're designed to scare nations into backing down from supporting Kyiv. Moore also stressed the high cost of failing to aid Ukraine, warning that if Putin succeeds, other adversaries like China and North Korea could be emboldened. Well, his comments today come as intelligence reports show a rise in Russian sabotage efforts targeting the West. And the wait is over. Notre Dame's grand revival is finally on display. The French President Emmanuel Macron is touring the restored cathedral today, offering a first glimpse inside it since 2019, when a fire destroyed its iconic spire. The almost £600 million renovation has been shrouded in secrecy, with only a few glimpses shared over the last few years. Now the Gothic masterpiece is ready to welcome the public again when it reopens on the 7th of December. And let's just take you back now to the Commons, where MPs continue to debate that historic bill to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales, sparking, as I said, at the top of the hour, a sharp debate in the Commons. Currently, UK laws at this stage banning any form of assisted dying, but today's decision could indeed pave the way for some significant change. We will keep across that story for you throughout the afternoon, expecting a vote at around 2:30 this afternoon. Those are the latest headlines. I'll hand you straight back now to Charlie and Dawn.
Thank you very much, Sam. Well, let's get stuck into today's topics, because MPs face one of the biggest votes in British history as the assisted dying bill will pass or fail today.
If successful, the bill could pave the way for terminally ill adults to be given medical assistance in ending their own life. MPs from across the political spectrum are divided on the issue and have been given a free vote from their respective party to decide themselves whether to support it or not.
Well, let's cross now to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who is live in Westminster for us. And Catherine, what have you been hearing this morning at those demonstrations?
Yes, good afternoon, both. It's a very sombre mood here in Westminster because MPs have to make probably the most consequential decision of all of their careers. Outside there are lots of people from Dignity in Dying dressed in pink, saying that terminally ill people need the choice of what they call a dignified death. Other protesters saying first do no harm, disability campaigners and so on. Very, very strong feelings on all sides, and lots of MPs in the chamber. Still really, really conflicted. I bumped into a cabinet minister just on the way in a little bit earlier, and she was telling me that she'd only just made up her mind. She wasn't saying how she was going to vote. She said, you know, we were told not to sort of say what our personal preference was very, very powerful in the chamber. We've got 5 hours of debate. We're about halfway through now. We had Kim Leadbeater, whose bill this is, speaking, telling quite horrific stories of people who had terrible, terrible deaths, details that I am not going to say on a Friday afternoon on television, but absolutely unimaginable. Kit Malthouse, similar, a big supporter of this bill. They are saying that it has the strictest safeguards in the world, but plenty of MPs in the Commons voicing very serious concerns. Danny Kruger, just one of many who spoke very, very powerfully. One of the things he said was, it will change life and death for everyone. He was saying, if you do this, if you cross the Rubicon, so to speak, nothing will be the same again. It will affect everybody. He's saying that it won't end with the terminally ill. It will be broadened. He's saying that somebody who's anorexic and refuses food would become eligible. He's saying that true dignity consists of being cared for till the end. Lots of very emotional interventions as well. We had Labour MP Meg Hillier talking about a personal story of her daughter who had acute pancreatitis, was in intensive care for 2.5 months, was okay in the end, but she was breaking down in tears, and she was saying palliative care is not good enough. This is not the time. If you have a scintilla of doubt, you must reject this bill. We don't know which way this is going to go. It seems to be close. More MPs have declared that they are for it than against it. However, there's still a large number that haven't said either way and are potentially making up their minds right now, listening to the speeches of MPs. We're expecting the result at about 2:30.
Catherine, just one quick question. 160 MPs want to speak on this matter. The bill was only published 3 weeks ago, a private member's bill. To me, with such a huge subject, such an important decision, it doesn't seem enough time. Why didn't Keir Starmer introduce a white paper on this? Why is it seems so rushed?
Well, that's what a lot of people are saying, that this has simply not been given the time. There is no impact assessment. Normally, if it were a government bill, they would have had to have done a lot of work to work out what the implications would be of passing legislation like this. Of course, it's only at the second reading at the moment. That has not been done. So some MPs feeling that they're being asked to vote blind on this. Now, Layla Moran, the Lib Democrat, she said that she's voting in favour, but she said to MPs, look, if you're not sure, let's keep the discussion going, vote for it today, you can always change your mind later. Many others think that really, if the decision is made to approve it today, it will be too late to back out later. The Prime Minister, of course, we know, made a promise to Esther Rantzen, who is terminally ill. I was interviewing Esther Rantzen's daughter earlier. She was talking about to have the option of assisted dying as being like a healing balm. She said they say that hundreds of terminally ill people take their lives every year, but many others are saying that elderly people, disabled people may feel that they're a burden. They're worried about coercion. They say that the supposed safeguards are nothing of the sort. Diane Abbott, the mother of the house, was saying that coercion can be what you don't say. Feelings running very high, but it is very, very respectful in the chamber, a very different mood to what you normally see in the House of Commons.
Catherine Forster, live from Westminster. Thank you very much for that. Well, joining us now is disability campaigner George Fielding, and this must be a day of enormous emotion. There's a lot of feeling on this debate. I believe you're opposed to the bill.
I am most definitely opposed. It is a pleasure to be with you as we see MPs debate what is the most consequential and impactful, dangerous and dark legislation that I have seen be debated in Parliament in my lifetime. Let me be very clear as to what MPs are are discussing today. They are discussing whether to actually amend the Suicide Act. If this is passed, it would be the first time that we've actually enabled and assisted somebody in their desire to commit suicide. And I genuinely do believe that is the right language to use. Yes, everybody here will see my wheelchair, but I was the youngest person to set up a CQC Care Quality Commission regulated social care provider. Let me tell you now, there are 4 broken systems, which mean that this legislation is unsafe and will always be unsafe. We have a broken NHS. Wes Streeting has said as much. We have a threadbare social care system. We have a legal system in backlog. Every lawyer that I've spoken to on this matter says it takes on average about 18 months to 2 years to put any case before the courts at this moment in time, yet they want to fast-track this. And crucially, local authorities are going bankrupt. 1 in 3 local authorities is going bankrupt, and there is a backlog also for counselling and therapy. All of these social systems that we have are broken, and they are social systems that our most vulnerable, disenfranchised and disabled communities rely on day in, day out. I'm not opposing this from a religious perspective. I'm opposing this purely on social justice grounds. That there is no such thing at this moment in time as equity in front of our healthcare system.
I was going to say, George, if this does get passed, and it is very close at the moment, how much more vulnerable will you personally feel?
Oh, a lot more vulnerable. A lot more vulnerable, and that's for a number of reasons. People always say, "Oh, dismiss Canada. Don't talk about Canada." This is like Canada in one crucial respect. It allows doctors to bring it up as a treatment option, and also in that regard, there is no clause in this bill at the moment to enable doctors to conscientiously object. So what they are required to do, if they get a note from a patient saying that they wish to be allocated and put forward for assisted suicide, the doctor is duty-bound to pass that on. So what you are doing is you are creating a 2-tier system in the NHS between the doctors that won't and the doctors that will sign it off. All this will be a treadmill, and it'll go round and round and round like a carousel until that is signed off. And we do not, at this moment in time, we're not giving due respect to the fact that this changes the very nature of a doctor's relationship between the doctor and their patient, and what it doesn't give credence to is that there is so much emotional, administrative, but also an ethical burden. The Hippocratic oath that doctors take is to preserve life and alleviate pain. And that's not what doctors will be doing. It's not what they came into their job to do. Doctors oppose this, judges oppose this, coroners oppose this, the disabled community oppose this, and the religious community oppose it.
I should say there are views on all sides here from those communities you've just referenced. There are doctors who do support assisted dying.
Yes.
You're referring to the situation in Canada, of course, which has legalised some form of assisted dying for a few years now. You're taking examples from there as to risks that might happen here, but campaigners for this bill say that there are world-leading safeguards in place in this bill that would not replicate some of the dangers and concerns we have seen raised in other countries. What's your view when you hear about these safeguards that they're proposing?
I don't think we've read the same bill. I am respectful, however, of that's what they say. Let me say, as a social care professional, as someone that led a social care company and delivered care, both residential home care and to hundreds of people across the country, I was never trained on coercion. We talk about safeguarding, but coercion is not covered under the Safeguarding Act. And therefore, if you are spotting coercion, you are doing it purely on instinct. Now, coercion, there's 2 types of coercion. There's internal and external coercion. Internal coercion is, I want to die because I realise my loved ones and my healthcare professionals, their life would be easier. There's external coercion, that says, what about this? Because we need your bed. We need your bed. Now, have we all just forgotten about COVID? Have we all just forgotten about the fact that in every hospital in the country, there are wards of people that are fit and able to go home, but they haven't got the housing. They haven't got the support system around them. Fix that first.
Do you support any form of this bill at all? I mean, what would you say if Esther Rantzen was sitting here now, or Esther's daughter? They've campaigned for this for a long time now. It's very, very important to them. What would you say to them if they were sitting here talking to you?
I would say this. I would say this. There are actually quite a lot of things we agree on. Nobody I love, nobody I ever cared for, did I want to live in pain, die in pain, and without dignity. I would say thank you, Esther Rantzen, because you have started a conversation as the remarkable campaigner you are. I think this is the only issue I've ever disagreed with Esther on. You've started a conversation about the most un-British subject, which is death. And I'm not trying to be too philosophical about it, but we all have a terminal illness. It is called life. And therefore, we need to give provision and resource a good death, absolutely. But currently in this country, only a third of palliative care is state-funded. Only a third of palliative care is state-funded. The rest is charitable provision or private. There is so much we can do. There is so much we can do to invest in good palliative care, to invest in a good NHS and invest in social care. And in doing so, you will provide better care for everybody. Now, we cannot also ever legislate and eliminate pain. Sadly, it is part of the human experience. No, I'm not in pain, but a lot of people with disabilities are. And every one of us on this earth will one day be in pain. And there seems to be a dehumanising aspect to this, that we are so fearful of death, we are traumatised by death. Every case study or anecdote that I've heard from a proponent of this bill starts with, "But I lost my mother, I lost my father." Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I get it, and I apologise, but the law has to apply to everybody. And please do not do me or anybody who is opposed to this bill the indignity, because we've all known people that will die and have died in circumstances we wouldn't wish. But we have to make the quality of our social care and NHS better and safeguard it and the professionals, because if we don't, what you are saying is that there are some people's lives that are of value and there are some people's lives that are more disposable. And sadly, whatever your politics, traditionally and historically, that value, that productive value, goes along capitalist lines.
George, I'm sorry, I have to leave it there, but thank you very much for your very impassioned statements there. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, at GB News, we love to hear what you think, and every day we will be running our poll of the day. And today we're asking, do you fear and that the assisted dying law could be abused? The final result will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show.
And for all our latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/yourpoll.
Now, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show.
Heidi Alexander is appointed Transport Secretary following the resignation of Louise Hay, after it was revealed she misled the police a decade ago when she made a false report about her mobile phone being stolen. We'll see you soon.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Morning, and good morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a big news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the the prince was obviously, or the king, when he was prince, had the duchy. And these properties, portfolios as well, I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello. Good afternoon, Britain.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. It's GB News, and we've got some breaking news for you that's come in the last half hour, which is that Heidi Alexander, the Labour MP for Swinton South, has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary.
Yes, indeed. This follows the resignation of Louise Hay earlier this morning. In 2014, the former Transport Secretary pleaded guilty to making a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen. In a letter to the Prime Minister, she said she is totally committed to the government's political project and believes it will be best served by her support from the outside of it.
Well, with us now to discuss this further is the former Conservative MP, Daniel Kawczynski. Daniel, the question I think that a lot of people are thinking right now is, why did Keir Starmer appoint Louise Hay to his cabinet when he knew about this conviction?
Well, I think that's an extremely important question, and I'm sure that next week in the House of Commons there will be parliamentarians who are seeking the answer to that. The Prime Minister has a duty and responsibility to ensure that everybody in his cabinet is beyond reproach. But the point I'd like to make is that the Labour Party accused our party, the Conservative government, of being embroiled in sleaze. That was a very damning indictment, and it did great damage to our election prospects. In a very short period of time in this Parliament, there's been the clothes scandal involving Sir Keir, there's been a Labour MP punching somebody, there's been the fake CV, and now this. So I think it's very regrettable that politicians attack one another as being sleazy, because in any organisation or institution, mistakes are made and there are scandals, whether it's the Church of England, whether it's the BBC. And I think we should remonstrate when somebody has made a mistake, but not be so visceral to one another when you're dealing with a large organisation.
Keir Starmer pre-election was always saying, you know, he's going to be tough on people that make any transgressions. Judge me by my actions, not my words. I mean, he has acted fast over this, if we argue. But, you know, judgment has to be questioned on giving Louise the job in the first place. And as you just said, Rachel Reeves lied on her CV and on her LinkedIn profile. Where does this leave Rachel Reeves?
Well, absolutely, but the point about the former Transport Secretary is absolutely critical, because the Prime Minister has been told that there was a police investigation. Now, obviously, if the police decide to refer it to the courts, obviously she was interviewed before, but there was sufficient concern by the police that they referred it to the magistrates. I'm very surprised that the Prime Minister did not want to make that statement at the start of his administration, get it out there into the open, and perhaps she would have remained in the cabinet. They've just tried to brush this under the carpet, and it's the media, I have to say. And it's easier for me to say it now that I'm no longer a member of Parliament. I pay tribute to the media for the role that they play in exposing these flaws.
Well, that's how we earn a living. But looking at this discussion about Louise Hay and this previous conviction, I've also heard people saying this morning that this is another example potentially of Keir Starmer thinking more as a lawyer and not as a politician, because the conviction is spent and people deserve second chances, as happened a decade ago. Of course, that's the defence that we've heard from many Labour members and supporters. But at the same time, fraud, that sort of allegation and conviction, is quite specific to politics, because people see that sort of behaviour as being... It bars you from several roles further down in your life. Why does Keir Starmer think it might allow you to just go on and be a very senior politician in the Cabinet?
Well, of course, she continues to be a Member of Parliament, and she will continue to be a Member of Parliament, and Sir Keir Starmer said that she has a great career ahead of her. I mean, on the one hand, she's resigned from the Cabinet. He's suggesting that after a due period of time, she may be brought back. That's happened to other politicians in the past. But when you have that extraordinarily privileged position, not just as a Member of Parliament, one of 650, but when you have that extraordinary, powerful, privileged position of sitting round a cabinet table with just another 21 or 22 people running a country and running a government department, then I'm afraid I don't think that any of these things can be tolerated.
Just finally, one quick question. There is quite clearly someone out to get Louise, who leaked this story to the press. Do you think this illustrates as much infighting and backbiting as the Conservative Party faced?
Well, let's wait and see how we judge the Labour Party over the course of this whole administration. It's too early to tell. And I'm not going to sit here and say this Labour government is riddled with sleaze. It's too early to say that. But I go back to my earlier point. Be careful trying to say that you are whiter than white when you have no control over some of these events that clearly affect all political parties, not just in the United Kingdom, but around the world.
Daniel Kaczynski, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show, because in just under 2 hours, MPs will vote on the assisted dying bill for the first time in nearly a decade. The outcome is predicted to be on a knife edge.
We'll be there live, but first it's your news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It is 12:33, the top story this lunchtime. Well, let's take you back now to the Commons, where MPs are continuing to debate that historic bill to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales. It is sparking sharp division in Parliament today. Current laws in the UK ban any form of assisted dying, but today's decision could pave the way for change. Kim Ledbeater, the Labour MP leading the charge, opened her debate today with a plea for choice, for autonomy and dignity in death. However, opponents are warning it's too big and too flawed to fix. Meanwhile, campaigners have been outside on both sides of the debate, gathering in Westminster as MPs face that free vote on the issue. The Commons has until 2:30 this afternoon to vote, with that outcome, though, still unclear, as many MPs, including the Prime Minister, haven't revealed their stance. Well, Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary in the last hour or so. That's after Louise Hay stepped down this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until that promotion today. The cabinet resignation of Louise Hay came after Sir Keir Starmer experienced his first resignation since his election victory. It emerged last night that she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insisted she gained nothing from the incident. Greg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from MasterChef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. The broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among those making claims, accusing him of using sexualised language on the programme in 2011. The production company of the show says it's launching an external review, with Greg Wallace fully cooperating during their investigation. But his lawyers insist the claims are entirely false. Russia is carrying out a staggeringly reckless campaign of sabotage across Europe. That's according to Britain's MI6 chief, Richard Moore. In a speech in Paris, he warned that Putin's actions are not just aimed at Ukraine, but at threatening European and transatlantic security. He also highlighted that Russia's nuclear threats designed to scare nations into backing down from supporting Kyiv. Moore stressed the high cost of failing to aid Ukraine in the war and warned that if Putin succeeds, other adversaries like China and North Korea could be emboldened. His comments come as intelligence reports show a rise in Russian sabotage efforts targeting the West. Go with me on this one. A banana has been eaten, but not just any banana. This one cost a whopping £4.9 million. Chinese-born cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun has followed through on his promise to eat the fruit from an infamous artwork. Mr. Sun brought the duct-taped banana at a Sotheby's auction last week, outbidding 6 others. During a press conference in Hong Kong, he compared the art to cryptocurrency, saying it was better than other bananas. The artwork, in fact, has already been eaten twice before being replaced ahead of exhibitions. But Mr. Sun is the first one to pay for the privilege. And just before I hand you back to Charlie and Dawn, let's bring you a line we're getting from Surrey Police. You may remember the story of a 10-month-old calf that was rammed down by a police car, that is, over the recent weeks. Well, we are now hearing that a police driver, the one who rammed that calf, in that police vehicle, will return to frontline duties after an investigation carried out by Surrey Police found the tactic, they say, was both lawful and indeed necessary. Those are the latest headlines for now. I will take you straight back now to Charlie and Dawn enjoying their bananas.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A lot of cloud in western areas today, but in the east, some fine and sunny conditions. Still pretty chilly in the east, but it is gradually turning milder. We've got high pressure to the east, low pressure to the west, and these weather fronts are providing thick cloud and outbreaks of rain. Quite a damp afternoon across Northern Ireland. It's been a very wet morning across the Western Isles of Scotland. Further pulses of rain coming in here. Also pretty gusty on the west coast of Scotland. Some rain trickling into Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall also, but for much of the Midlands, Eastern England, Northern England, dry and fine with some hazy sunshine. It is still quite chilly here. Temperatures in single digits. For the west, it's turning milder, but obviously it doesn't feel all that mild with the wind and the rain, which will continue to chug its way across much of Scotland this evening. So quite a damp evening here. Still further pulses of heavy rain to come across the Western Isles, and still quite blustery too. The rain, though, clearing from Northern Ireland, so after a soggy afternoon, the evening looking a lot drier. That rain will be working into northwest England, so a wet end to the working week, and some of that rain trickling into parts of the Midlands and clearing away from parts of Wales. Much of eastern England staying largely dry into this evening. Temperature will drop away before the cloud moves in as we go through the evening, bringing a few spots of rain, but not too much rain at all across East Anglia and the southeast. And for much of the night, it'll be dry. It's going to be quite cloudy, a bit misty and murky, especially on some hills, but quite a bit milder than recent nights. Temperatures dropping early in the east, but by morning, most places well above freezing, and indeed in double digits to start the weekend in the west. We are going to have a lot of cloud around on Saturday, but some places, particularly to the northeast of hills, northeastern parts of Wales, northeast England, northeast Scotland, should see some sunny spells. There'll be some showery rain, particularly crossing Scotland, but many places will be dry. Still quite breezy, particularly again around western coasts, but much, much milder for all of us. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
The eastbound side of the M62 is now blocked, causing long delays to a vehicle fire from 22 to Huddersfield at 23. Northbound on the M18, all lanes have reopened, though an earlier closure whilst the vehicle has a tyre changed, but that's cleared from 2 through to 3 for St Catherine's. Long delays for the northbound side of the M11. There is a closure causing severe delays to a lorry fire from Cambridge South at 11 through to Cambridge at 12. Delays are to Duxford at 10. It is also slow throughout Cambridge as traffic diverts. It's also looking busy southbound as onlookers look across. Northbound on the M49, there's a closure to emergency resurfacing repairs that continue from junction 18 through to junction 22 for the M4. For now, that's your very latest travel update.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News with Charlie and me, Dawn. And a busy, busy show, a really packed show, obviously talking about assisted dying, and we really want to know your opinion on this one. This is the important debate today, gbnews.com/your say. We're already in one very emotive interview. We're expecting to get the result in around a couple of hours, I believe.
2:30. 2:30 is when the voting starts.
Yes, OK.
But now let's go to Downing Street and get some more reaction to the news that Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary. And we're joined now by the GB News political editor, Christopher Hope. What have you heard from the lobby meeting this morning, Chopper?
Yes, morning both here from Downing Street. It started late, about 20 minutes late, maybe to allow time for the government to announce Heidi Alexander is the new Transport Secretary. She was the Courts Minister. As things stand, there isn't a Courts Minister, so we're expecting a degree of a mini reshuffle in government 5 months into this new government. As for why Louise Hay resigned, that is less than clear. All we've been told by Downing Street is that following further information emerging, the Prime Minister has accepted her resignation. We said, what is this more information the PM received? We know overnight, don't we? We've been reporting all morning about this alleged theft of her phone, and then she found it in a drawer, turned it on, and the police said, why has it been turned on? And she went to court and had that conviction that is now spent before she became an MP. We were told by the Deputy Prime Minister's spokesman that they're very clear that these are the ministers should record in writing and declare private interests which might create a conflict of interest, accurate or perceived. We don't think there's any reference in the ministerial code about declaring spent convictions, but we're trying to get that established. We are told she resigned. We're told the PM learnt the new information yesterday. That suggests that, having been told, according to Louise Hay's account, about this conviction when she joined the shadow cabinet back in 2020, he learnt more yesterday. Now, whether that was the fact that there was more reporting about it in the Times newspaper and on Sky News, or maybe it was emerged that that this wasn't fully declared to Whitehall, to the system in Whitehall that monitors ministerial interests. We don't know the answer, and it was a deeply frustrating meeting with the PM's deputy official spokesman, where we were told very little really to enhance what we know. As I say, going back to the beginning here, what we are told here by the spokesman is that following further information, the PM has accepted her resignation.
Well, was Louise basically a dead woman walking after her comment about P&O ferries? I mean, Starmer was pretty quick to dismiss her opinion on that then, wasn't he? Do you think that sealed her fate?
I don't know that. I mean, certainly those remarks about the fact she had been boycotting P&O after the way those workers were sacked, that for a few days was jeopardising a £1 billion investment in London Gateway, and that was going to overshadow the very important and very successful, I would say, investment summit that the PM chaired. So that may have been part of it. We don't know. Certainly the abruptness and the curt nature of the exchange of letters published this morning by Number 10. Louise Hay's letter was a long one, said she didn't want to be a distraction and went through her achievements in government, addressed Dear Prime Minister, signed Yours faithfully. The PM's reply was Dear Louise and signed Keir Starmer and was about a paragraph long. That is one of the shortest resignation responses to any minister resigning from a PM I can ever remember in 25 years covering politics. So that was surprising. It felt like a bit of a kind of, this is the last thing the PM needs. I mean, we will be seeing him later. He'll vote in the House of Commons today in the assisted dying bill, I should say. We won't be hearing anything from the PM today about why he's voting either way. I did push quite hard for that from Number 10. We were told he won't say anything. You might expect maybe after the vote for the leader of the country to say why he's voted either way and where this will take us, because it's a massive issue here being debated in the Commons, but we will not be hearing from the Prime Minister after the vote. There's also some comments, if I can quickly add them, on Greg Wallace, the suspended, or he stood back from his duties as a MasterChef presenter. The Deputy Prime Minister's spokesman said about Greg Wallace, the allegations are deeply concerning regarding the reporting they've seen today. It's right that a thorough investigation is conducted, and it's one for the BBC.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Interesting times.
Very much.
Interesting times. Lots of you asking what is our replacements experience in transport, basically.
Yes, well, we'll find out, I'm sure, down the line. Looking forward to her first interview. And that discussion just heard there, the PM spokesperson talking more about Greg Wallace then on the big debate going on today, adds to the feeling among many that there hasn't been enough time discussing this assisted bill.
No.
This assisted dying bill going ahead today.
It was 3 weeks ago it was put forward.
Yeah.
And 160 MPs in 5 hours want to have their say.
Yeah.
That's literally enough time to say, and my point is, we'll get back to you.
Sure. And people want to have this debate, as we're seeing from the Your Says coming in this
Really?
afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Got lots more coming up on today's show, and we'll be live on the streets of the capital looking for the best Black Friday deals for you.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The former royal correspondent for The Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Good to see you this morning, Charles. And so good to see Catherine back to work with a hug.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, there are a few royal jobs that, touch at the heartstrings, and this is certainly one of those. And I think it's the first time we've actually seen Catherine back in, a royal duty since she herself confirmed that she'd finished chemotherapy.
Done so much, haven't they, the Princess of Wales and the King, to raise awareness for these cancers.
Here we have both the King and Catherine having, explained to the nation and the rest of the world that they were battling or are still battling cancer, just like everyone else.
How sincere is all of this? I mean, it looks like she's a wonderful, kind, caring woman, but I don't know. I've never met her.
Well, she is a wonderful, kind, caring woman. That is without a shadow of a doubt. And William heard about this young lady on a visit to the air ambulance, and they invited her because she's a photographer, so she wanted to take. She has a bucket list and wanted to take pictures of an investiture. I mean, make no mistake, people like Catherine are just absolutely wonderful in what they do and how they do it. I mean, and Catherine is the superstar of the royal family. Of that, there is no doubt.
It's the cockles of my heart, Charles. It really does. It's really good to see you. Thanks very much.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Charles. Thanks. And Liz, who is this 16-year-old amateur photographer who was hugged by Princess of Wales yesterday, said it was a dream come true.
I bet it was.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 12:50. This is GB News with me, Charlie Peters.
And me, Dawn Newsom. Yes, indeed. I'm dressed festively, but I'm not, thankfully, dressed as an elf. Unlike some people today, now, shoppers across the UK are hitting the high street to snatch the best Black Friday deals. Over £13 billion was spent in last year's sale, but some consumer experts are suggesting that the figure could be beaten in this year's sales. So how can you find the best deals and stay away from the rip-offs?
Well, let's cross now to the GB News reporter Jack Carson, who is on Oxford Street in London. Is he dancing? He's still dancing. Of course he's dancing. But Jack, in between all of this festive dancing you're getting on with, which you were doing an hour ago as well, have you had a chance to check out some of the deals on offer today?
Well, one of the things that people are saying to us here on Regent Street is technology is the big thing that they are looking for within these Black Friday deals. Things like clothes shops all up and down here on Regent Street are doing Black Friday deals. We've seen deals up to 70% off, up to 40% off, but those big cost items are where people look to try and save money at this time of year. Brits are going to be spending more than £3 billion here just on Black Friday here in the UK. £1.92 billion of that comes from just online. So long days that are gone are the huge queues that maybe we saw, people fighting over for TVs. Those electronic goods are one of the main purchases that people are buying online. If you look at the way that retail sales have gone over the last month at the same time as well. Last month sales were down on retail across the country by about 0.7%. That basically consumer experts are saying it's because people are saving for days like today. We've been speaking to people here on Regent Street. Here's what they told us.
Being savvy, I think. You're taking advantage of probably getting some bargains for Christmas. But I usually work on a Black Friday, so I don't really get to go in and out of the shop so much, but I do take advantage online.
Nowadays, I think we're that clued up about how much things cost. When I was actually looking at some of the prices on Black Friday, they weren't that much different to like how they've been.
You think that you can get some promotion, something, especially technology, like when there's computers and stuff like that.
Depends what the thing is. If it's electronics or something, I often do wait because I think there's big savings to be made.
My partner's more kind of better with this type of things, and I tend to follow suit. But yeah, I do occasional Black Friday shopping, yes.
So that's what some people have been telling us here on Regent Street today. I have to say, if we look around, it is getting very, very busy. Some of them seemingly here just to watch me. But it is getting very, very busy here on Regent Street as people head into those shops all around us. Shops are heaving. And actually, if you look at some of the different, big stores across the country, John Lewis have brought in an extra 4,000 staff just in their distribution centres because of how many orders and deliveries they're expecting to have to take over the next few days. But also interestingly, people seem to buy too much at Black Friday. 1 in 3 of us are estimated to be returning up to 5 items. That probably comes more in clothing, but interestingly, people are also returning some items that they've bought in Black Friday. But here, of course, it is the start of Christmas. I'm having a great time being an elf as Black Friday carries on all around us.
Thank you, Jack Carson. Everyone there gathering on Regent Street just for you, and witness the fitness, dancing and speaking. Very impressive.
I have no words. I mean, Jack has been dancing non-stop like that for about an hour now. It suits him, though. I must admit, it does suit him.
He's doing a marvellous job.
The highlight of his career, I think.
And it seems like it's the highlight of certain people's shopping visit as well.
Yes,
just
indeed.
Standing around watching Carson.
Yes, OK.
Kick it out.
We're just grateful we're not dressed as elves.
Indeed.
OK.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. This is Jack. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. So you don't want to go anywhere unless you're dressing up as an elf to watch us, in which case it's fine. But while you're doing that, let's get the weather with Alex Deacon. See you soon.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A lot of cloud in western areas today, but in the east, some fine and sunny conditions. Still pretty chilly in the east, but it is gradually turning milder. We've got high pressure to the east, low pressure to the west, and these weather fronts are providing thick cloud and outbreaks of rain. Quite a damp afternoon across Northern Ireland. It's been a very wet morning across the Western Isles of Scotland. Further pulses of rain coming in here. Also pretty gusty on the west coast of Scotland. Some rain trickling into Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall also, but for much of the Midlands, Eastern England, Northern England, dry and fine with some hazy sunshine. It is still quite chilly here. Temperatures in single digits. For the west, it's turning milder, but obviously it doesn't feel all that mild with the wind and the rain, which will continue to chug its way across much of Scotland this evening. So quite a damp evening here. Still further pulses of heavy rain to come across the Western Isles, and still quite blustery too. The rain, though, clearing from Northern Ireland, so after a soggy afternoon, the evening looking a lot drier. That rain will be working into northwest England, so a wet end to the working week, and some of that rain trickling into parts of the Midlands and clearing away from parts of Wales. Much of eastern England, staying largely dry into this evening. Temperature will drop away before the cloud moves in as we go through the evening, bringing a few spots of rain, but not too much rain at all across East Anglia and the southeast. And for much of the night, it'll be dry. It's going to be quite cloudy, a bit misty and murky, especially on some hills, but quite a bit milder than recent nights. Temperatures dropping early in the east, but by morning, most places well above freezing, and indeed in double digits to start the weekend in the west. We are going to have a lot of cloud around on Saturday, but some places, particularly to the northeast of hills, northeastern parts of Wales, northeast England, northeast Scotland, should see some sunny spells. There'll be some showery rain, particularly crossing Scotland, but many places will be dry. Still quite breezy, particularly again around western coasts, but much milder for all of us. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun spent $6.2 million, £4.9 million on a banana, duct taped to a wall, a piece of art by artist Mauricio Catalan. Other artwork has recently caused controversy. A portrait of the British computer scientist Alan Turing by the world's first ultra-realistic robot artist, that is, say, ADAR, sold at auction for almost $1.1 million. Joining me now to talk about these latest hoo-has is art critic and mentor at the University of Arts London, Estelle Lovett. I have a feeling that in the case of the banana, it's quite a lot to do with the buyer. Now, you've researched the buyer a little bit. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Justin Sun?
Yes, so he's a very wealthy cryptocurrency dealer. And of course, you know, everything now is AI and FTs, and it's the way that money's going, and it's very good publicity for him. So obviously, you know, he's not daft. But what makes this banana so unusual is, and it has, as you say, taken the art world by storm. It is the current spectacle, and what's amazing is that even during these very difficult times, the art market still manages to spend big on a significant fuss. Why has it created this fuss? Well, don't forget, the winning bid just happened in a matter of minutes. It took Justin Sun minutes to beat 6 other rivals, so they've all got mega bucks in their pocket. But you know, it's conceptual art at its best.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Friday, the 29th of November. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Charlie Peters.
In the next hour, MPs will vote on assisted dying for the first time in nearly a decade. The Commons is packed with MPs in a heated debate.
Both pro and assisted dying protesters are currently gathered outside Parliament to make their voices heard as the outcome is predicted to be on a knife edge. We will be there live throughout the afternoon.
And Heidi Alexander is appointed Transport Secretary following the resignation of Louise Hay, after it was revealed she misled the police a decade ago when she made a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen. We are live on Downing Street with that story.
And the BBC says it has robust processes to deal with complaints as Greg Wallace quits MasterChef following claims of misconduct. But the former host has thanked his fans for their support.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
Well, join me here on Regent Street as Black Friday hits the UK. More than £3 billion is expected to be spent here, just in this country today. We're getting into the Christmas spirit early.
So not only have we got an elf now, we've got a dancing Christmas bear. Which bear was that? Was that Winnie the Pooh, I think?
There was nothing Christmassy about that bear. He looked very menacing. I'm feeling very nervous.
You're menaced by Winnie the Pooh?
It doesn't look good for Jack.
That's worrying.
For the first time, there was fear in his eyes there, I think. Well, we'll join him for the rest
Winnie
of the
the
show.
Pooh in a Santa hat.
Oh, he's happy
Pooh?
now. No, you know, if a bear approaches you like that, I think you have to start dancing along with him and hope for the best.
You need to tell me more about your weekends, young man, because bears approaching you like that does worry me. It has to be said, if you're talking about an average weekend. But we are obviously talking about the big, important story today, the assisted dying debate that is taking place in the House of Commons today, with plenty of strong views on all sides. And lots of you have been getting in touch as well, as we want you to, because this is such an important story. gbnews.com/your say. I just want to read this one out from Graham. Good afternoon, Graham, because many of you are saying a similar thing. Graham says he lost his dad with cancer and the pain he suffered was horrendous to witness. My dad was the same, Graham, believe me. I do know what you mean. But Graham, you say that assisted deaths already happen. They just weren't legal. And I do understand what you're meaning, because in many cases, doctors sort of like help people very near the end, and it's not legal, it's not above board. Everybody kind of knows it goes on, though, with a little bit more morphine than maybe is needed. Graham is saying that lots of you are pointing that out as well. So do we need to legislate? Do you need the government to legislate, given that the government haven't covered themselves in glory on this matter?
And potentially protect people who are in that sort of grey zone that we're talking about there. You know, or on the Louise Hay discussion, standing down, resigning from the Cabinet after this fraud conviction, Stephen Brown, good afternoon, Stephen, he says that the Transport Secretary has to forego her seat. Did she declare this conviction when she stood for office? And I think that's a very interesting point from Mr Brown there, because a lot of people are saying, how can you have a fraud conviction and be an MP? Fraud in politics, they're not a good combination. There are so many roles in our public professional life. People in the army, for example, you can't be a clerk in the army if you have any fraud conviction in the past. And how can we have that rule for soldiers, but another for people we trust to make and indeed legislate for us?
A convicted fraudster in charge of a £30 billion budget.
Not what necessarily would be ideal for that role.
But what do you think all about you, this show? gbnews.com/your say. Have your comment on whatever you want to talk about. Assisted dying, Louise Hay and that convicted fraud fact, and £30 billion budgets, or dancing Winnie the Poohs, which
Jack Carson,
have got Charlie scared.
Yes.
Which is worrying me, and I'm sitting next to him.
Well, first it's going to be your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom, fast approaching 5 minutes past 1. And the top story this lunchtime, the debate on assisted dying is intensifying in Parliament with just hours to go before a vote. More than 160 MPs are vying for a chance to speak ahead of that historic vote later. The end-of-life bill, which would allow terminally ill adults in England and Wales to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge, has, of course, sparked much division. Supporters, including Labour's Kim Leadbeater, argue it offers a more compassionate approach to end-of-life care. However, opponents, including Conservative MP Danny Kruger, warn it could lead to what he described as a state suicide service. Well, as MPs prepare for that vote at 2:30 this afternoon, campaigners on both sides are gathering outside Parliament. Rebecca Wilcox, the daughter of campaigner and broadcaster Dame Esther Ranson, who herself is terminally ill, has been among those outside Parliament today urging MPs to rethink their choice.
We're a nation of compassionate, kind people, and this bill has compassion and empathy and safeguards as its cornerstones. It couldn't be more carefully set out to protect the vulnerable, to protect those of reduced capacity, but most importantly, to give people choice at the end so they don't have to have a death that leaves their family traumatised and makes them worry for the rest of their lives, however long it is.
Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary after Louise Hay stepped down this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today and worked as Sadiq Khan's Deputy Transport Mayor between 2018 and 2021. Her cabinet resignation, that is Louise Hay, was Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory came after it emerged last night that she was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from that incident. Downing Street says allegations about Greg Wallace are deeply concerning. That's after the presenter has been thanking fans for their support amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments during his time on MasterChef. The broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people known to have made claims accusing him of using sexualised language on MasterChef in 2011. The production company Banijay UK says it's launching an external review with Greg Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. His lawyers, though, insist the claims are entirely false. A Surrey police officer who rammed a cow in a police vehicle will return to frontline duties after an investigation found his actions were lawful and necessary. The incident, which saw a 10-month-old calf struck by a police car in Staines-upon-Thames in June, sparked widespread criticism after footage circulated online. Surrey's police investigation, which included 250 pieces of video footage and 75 witness statements, concluded, though, that no criminal offences occurred and no further action was required. The officer involved will now return to work with no further misconduct proceedings. A man has been charged after an 8-year-old girl and her father were injured in a double shooting in West London. 32-year-old Jazz Reid from Kensington is facing 2 counts of attempted murder, along with firearms charges after the incident in Ladbroke Grove on Friday. He's due in court today, and detectives from the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Command are now leading the investigation and also urging anyone with information to come forward. Voting is underway in Ireland's general election today. Polls open until 10 o'clock tonight, and it's a tight race with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin all hovering around 20% support, according to the latest polls. Over 3 million voters will be deciding the makeup of Ireland's parliament, with 174 seats up for grabs. That's more than ever before. Sinn Féin's leader Mary Lou MacDonald has fielded more candidates this time. She's aiming to form a government without the 2 traditional powerhouses. We're expecting an exit poll at 10 o'clock this evening, giving us a first glimpse of what Ireland's next government could look like. Russia is reportedly waging a staggeringly reckless campaign of sabotage across Europe. That's according to Britain's MI6 chief, Richard Moore. In a speech today in Paris, he warned that Putin's actions are not just aimed at Ukraine, but at threatening European and transatlantic security. He also highlighted that Russia's nuclear threats are designed to scare nations into backing down from supporting Kyiv. Moore stressed that the high cost of failing to aid Ukraine would warn that if Putin succeeds, other adversaries like China and North Korea could be emboldened. Well, his comments come as intelligence reports are showing a rise in Russian sabotage efforts targeting the West. And breaking news for you, a banana has been eaten. No, trust me, it's not just any banana. This one cost a whopping £4.9 million. Chinese-born cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun has followed through on his promise to eat the fruit from an infamous artwork. He bought the duct-taped banana at a Sotheby's auction last week, outbidding 6 other eager banana eaters. During a press conference in Hong Kong, he compared the art to cryptocurrency, saying it was, well, better than other bananas. The artwork's been eaten twice already, though, before being replaced ahead of exhibitions. But Mr. Sun is the first man to pay for the privilege. Lucky him. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 1:10. You're watching GB News with me, Charlie Peters.
And me, Dawn Neeson.
Well, MPs face one of the biggest votes in British history today as the assisted dying bill will pass or fail this afternoon. If successful, the bill could pave the way for terminally ill adults to be giving medical assistance in ending their own life.
MPs from across the political spectrum are divided on the issue and have been given a free vote from their respective parties themselves to whether to support it or not. Joining us now is the writer and broadcaster, Dr. Rabbi Jonathan Romain. Hello, thank you very much for joining us today, Jonathan, if I may call you that. I understand you support this bill. Can you tell us why?
Well, I started off in opposition, actually, when I was a trainee Minister of Faith, for all the usual knee-jerk reasons. But once I became a minister and visited people in hospitals and hospices, I just saw too many people dying. Dying in pain, that is. I mean, some people do have a gentle death, but others die in absolute agony. And the tipping point for me came when I visited someone, I'll call him Colin, in a hospice, having wonderful care. But he was not only in bed, but he was actually on his bed, on his knees, with his head between his knees. And I said, Colin, why are you in that position? And he said, it's the only way I can control the pain. And I thought there must be a better way to end your life. And this bill, which is only for the terminally ill, will allow people who are suffering greatly. And the other thing that really persuaded me to back this is that I suddenly realised this wouldn't be a leap into the unknown, leap into the great unfearful dark. This has been going on in Oregon, exactly the same system, for over 25 years. It means we've got a quarter of a century's worth of medical records, experience, regulation, monitoring. We know it's safe, we know it works. Most people don't take it up, but for those people who are dying in great pain, it's wonderful. And the strange thing is, you know, that there's a lot of people who apply for it, but then who get the prescription but don't take it because they want to have that emotional safety net of knowing that if things get really awful, then they can do so. It's a matter of compassion. It's a matter of options. It won't be for everybody, but for those who want it, it will be so powerful.
And Rabbi, we heard in the last hour from a disability campaigner against the bill. He's called George Fielding, and he referred to concerns he had about internal and external coercion, people feeling like a burden and being pressured by their state, by their families, that you've got to free up a bed or you're too much of a burden on us now. Are you confident, as George isn't, that there are enough safeguards in this bill to prevent people from being coerced into assisted dying?
Yes, I am confident, partly because, as I say, this exact same bill has worked in the States for 25 years. So, again, we know we've got the record, we've got the experience. Secondly, this isn't about disability. Disabled people can live long, enriching lives, as we just saw not so long ago from the Paralympics. It's only for those who are terminally ill. In other words, they're dying already. It's not about shortening life, it's about shortening death. And it's a choice between a good death and a bad death. Frankly, all of us want to have as good a life as possible, don't we? Why can't we have as good a death as possible? You know, we choose what we do, who to marry, where to live, what job to have. Why can't we choose how we die and have that option to die peacefully and gently? It seems to me humane, religious. Why not give people that option? And frankly, who am I or you or anybody else to tell somebody who is dying in pain, no, you've got to suffer on because of my views, my ideology? Surely it's up to that person how they end their life if they are dying already.
Jonathan, the NHS and our legal system are already on its knees in this country. They can't cope as it is. Do you seriously think they will be able to handle a situation if this bill passes with all the extra burden that comes with that?
Oh, yeah, because after all, these are people who are terminally ill from cancer, motor neuron, Parkinson. In other words, they're already part of the hospital or hospice system. The NHS is already looking after them. So, you know, this is not a sudden avalanche of new cases. These are cases already within the NHS system. We're not talking about, by the way, and that's the other interesting thing about Oregon, and I refer to it because, again, 25 years of records, that's got to be a powerful example, is that that a lot of people, do start off with palliative care, but then graduate when they find that palliative care can't help them, and then they opt for an assisted death. Again, it's a matter of giving individuals choice.
I just want to play a clip from Parliament while this debate's been going on, because the MP Danny Kruger has been chastised for referring to this process as assisted suicide. Let's hear that clip now.
Assisted suicide is legal, including in Oregon.
Councillor
Nettles, point of order.
He's using the incorrect language. It's not suicide. That's offensive. Please correct your language, Mr.
That's not a point of order, Danny Kruger. I'm grateful I'm afraid to say, and I'm sorry if offence is given, the fact is that the value of actually having a bill in black and white is that we do need to see what the law really is, and what this bill would do, it would amend the Suicide Act of 1961. It will allow people to assist with a suicide for the first time. So I'm afraid that is, I mean, I respect the Honourable Lady's concerns there, but I'm afraid we do have to use the proper language here.
Rabbi, 170 MPs are debating this issue of major social change across just 4 hours, and there we've seen 1 minute of it, you might say, wasted on discussing offensive or non-offensive language. That comes into a wider discussion, does it not? Have people had enough time to really consider this, and have we had a sufficient debate around this issue ahead of this vote at 2:30 today?
Oh, yes, there's been plenty of time, because remember, this is a 5th or 6th bill that's been going on since the 1930s, and I can remember even just 4 bills in the last 10 years. In other words, there's been an enormous debate in the public, in Parliament. Plus, of course, this vote this afternoon isn't going to pass the bill. All it will do is say to MPs, now you take it to committee, now you analyse it, you discuss whether it's got to be more rigorous, you want to add extra clauses. It gives the MPs the chance to debate it even further, and the third reading won't be for another year. So it's not just about the 5 hours now, it's a matter of voting it through so that it can be properly discussed in greater detail. And by the way, Danny Kruger was wrong about suicide, because suicide largely is when somebody takes their life for political reasons, depression, and if they hadn't done so, they would have lived for another 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Assisted dying is when somebody's dying already. They are terminally ill. It's a critical difference, and he's using old-fashioned language for a modern phenomenon.
OK, Dr Rabbi Jonathan Romain, thank you very much for joining us this morning, supporting the assisted dying bill. Joining us now is 11-time Paralympic gold medalist Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson. Tanni, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. Now, you are against this bill. Can you tell us your reasons why?
I'm against because of the way that disabled people are currently treated in British society. Now, the UN rapporteur this year said that the UK is a bad place for disabled people to live. And, you know, as a Paralympian, as an ex-athlete, I'm treated 3 ways. One, as a Paralympian, it's great. One, as a parliamentarian, it's not great, or quite mixed. And then as a disabled person. Now, Paralympic team's 215 people. There's millions of disabled people out there who experience discrimination every single day in healthcare, in employment. You know, actually even just being able to get to the protest today, disabled people have had to jump through hoops. So I'm really worried that, you know, there's a lot of pity around disability, and I'm really worried that, you know, we will be included. In other jurisdictions around the world, disability is included. And you know, Oregon, which is now the country that those who want to change the law here seem to favour, they destroy the records after a year. Oregon's own health data is saying that suicide rates have gone up by 24%. This is not a poll from someone who's on my side. This is Oregon Health Authority saying it. So, you know, there's really simple sound bites. The arguments I have are not simple or quick to go through.
Well, we heard earlier this afternoon, Baroness, from a disability campaigner, George Fielding, who said that he feared that this bill passing would create a two-tiered society between disabled people and those who are not. Do you have the same sort of concern that this will create a layer of coercion on the disabled to consider taking or ending their lives earlier?
Yes, absolutely, because there's so much pity around us. You know, I'm in Parliament at the moment. In this very building, someone has said to me, if my life was like yours, I'd want to kill myself. And I have more privilege than any other disabled person, I know. So I work on coercion legislation. We know doctors and police are not good at spotting it. If you love me, you wouldn't wear that. If you loved me, you wouldn't see your family. If you'd love me, you'd think, So there are so many gaps in this bill. They're not safeguards. It allows doctor shopping. It allows the doctor to suggest it. If there's a doctor who's got a complicated waiting list, they could make decisions, to ease the waiting list. And in COVID, 60% of the people who died were disabled. And they had do not attempt resuscitation orders put on them without their permission or knowledge. So even if this bill passes, absolutely disabled people could qualify. If I got a pressure sore and it didn't heal, I could get a 6-month diagnosis. It's not just for cancer and leukemia. We've got doctors in the UK currently talking about terminal anorexia. And so in that way, it would be really easy to widen it without even changing the law.
Tanny, just very quickly, our earlier guest, George, said that he would, as a disabled man, would feel much more vulnerable if this bill passed. Would you feel more vulnerable?
Yes, I would. I'd be really worried about going to hospital. And I've had some amazing doctors. I'm not really sick, but, I've had a couple of times when I've had to go into hospital. And one of those cases a few years ago made me feel really quite scared, actually. I changed hospitals because of how I was being treated.
Well, Baroness Tanny Gray-Thompson, thank you very much for joining us on GB News this afternoon. Here we do love to hear what you think, and every day we will be running our poll of the day. And today we're asking, do you fear that an assisted dying law could be abused? The final results will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show. And
for all our latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/your poll. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. Heidi Alexander is appointed Transport Secretary following the resignation of Louise Hay after it was revealed she misled the police a decade ago when she made a false report about her mobile phone being stolen. We're live on Downing Street with that story. Don't go too far. We'll see you soon.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education Chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, Heidi Alexander, the Labour MP for Swindon South, has been appointed as new Transport Secretary.
This follows the resignation of Louise Hay earlier this morning.
In 2014, the former Transport Secretary pleaded guilty to making a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen.
In a letter to the Prime Minister, she said that she is totally committed to the government's political project, but believes it will be best served by her support from outside of the government.
OK, joining us now is GB News political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, good to see you again. Christopher, one question here. If, as we're led to believe, Louise's conviction was known to Keir Starmer, why has she had to resign now? I'm not sure what's going on here.
Dawn and Charlie, welcome back down street. Dawn, that is the question we do not have the answer to. Behind me, the number 10 Christmas tree is now decorated, ready for the lights to be turned on, I imagine, sometime next week. But the building behind me is not very full of Christmas cheer because Louise Hay has quit the government, the first resignation from this new government, replaced there by Heidi Alexander, the former courts minister. There's no one yet to replace Heidi Alexander, so we'll be seeing a mini reshuffle through the day as other people are brought in to take up these roles with the absence of Louise Hay. But Louise Hay, that's right, in 2014 she had this conviction over this issue of the mobile phone that she found in a drawer. She had said it had been stolen. She turned it on. She pled guilty in a court case, didn't answer police questions. She was advised to do so by her lawyer, which she now regrets following that advice at the time. She then became an MP and she declared this conviction, and now it's spent, by the way, so no longer needs to be declared in normal employment rules, but she declared it to the Prime Minister when he was leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, back in 2020. The question appears to be about whether it was declared to Whitehall, because that's, we think, what number 10 are getting at. So far, all we hear from the PM's deputy official spokesman is that following further information emerging, we think, yesterday, the Prime Minister has accepted her resignation. They won't say what this further information is. Is it some of the reporting in the papers today? The Times newspaper, which has led the way on this, they're reporting what Aviva thought about this issue of the mobile phones. Is that what the reporting is? Or is it the fact that maybe this was it reported when she became Transport Secretary and given in writing to the Permanent Secretary and declared in the normal way? The issue there, though, is whether we are seeing this, the ministers must record in writing and declare private interests, which may create a conflict of interest, accurate or perceived. The point is, if it's a perceived conflict, that's maybe the problem. We don't know the answer to that question yet, Dawn.
OK, thank you very much, Christopher Hope outside Downing Street, with the mystery of Louise Hay resigning, really, because it is a bit of a mystery now, isn't it?
It is.
If they knew about it, why is she resigning now?
Well, the Times are reporting that the police investigated just the one missing phone, but they said they've been told by, I imagine, sources linked to Aviva that there were multiple instances of mobile phones going missing. So that I think there might be a feeling in Downing Street this is a wider concern
There's more to
that
come.
could have been raised. One phone we know about, but they're reporting that there were multiple. Anyway, well, joining us now to discuss this further is the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. And Aaron, I believe that you don't think that Louise Hay should have been resigning this morning over this breaking news.
Well, like you say, it's one of those where you're a hostage to fortune. You might say somebody shouldn't resign, they've done nothing wrong, or it's not sufficiently bad for them to see the political exit door. And then, of course, more emerges and you look completely daft and people clip this up and I look ridiculous. But on the evidence we have so far, I really fail to understand why she has resigned, why she's gone. She's the Secretary of State, or she was the Secretary of State for Transport. It's a huge area for this government. They have made some significant commitments, not least the public ownership of this country's rail infrastructure. And I don't think it's in the national interest for Secretaries of State to be resigning willy-nilly. This is a spent conviction from 10 years ago. It just tells me you're not a serious government, you're not a serious country, if somebody tasked with something so important is going to be replaced over something, like I say, from a decade ago, a spent conviction. That's not to say I'm defending what she did. It was ridiculous. However, she did tell the Prime Minister it is a spent conviction. It was declared anyway. So like I say, this is a really, really perplexing case.
Even though she did paint herself into her own corner, didn't she? She was a forthright critic of Boris Johnson, and she has been known to call for others to resign at the drop of a hat, so surely she had to go by her own rules.
Dawn, it's a really fair point. And I'm somebody on the left. You know, I didn't vote Labour in the last general election, but I'm on the left. I'm more supportive of Labour than the Tories. That's certainly fair to say. And I really was sick of it with regards to people demanding Tory ministers resign left, right and centre prior to the July general election. Sometimes it's valid, of course. Somebody does something really bad, but often it's not. And whether it's a Tory minister or a Labour minister, as I said a moment ago, it is not in the national interest for people tasked with really serious jobs. These are really serious jobs if you're in the cabinet, just walking out of the door at the drop of a hat. Think about a business. Think about somebody who's in your management team, you know, your chief operations officer, your head of finance, and somebody says, oh, there's a spent conviction from 10 years ago, and they declared it anyway, but sorry, they have to go. Nobody in the business would say that's a sensible way to run things. Why on earth is government any different?
Oh, Aaron Bastani, thank you very much for that. I imagine some people might think that it's not in the national interest for someone with a fraud conviction to be looking after the transport in this nation, but there we have it.
It's just £30 billion. I mean, you know, I left £1 billion at home.
Back of the sofa?
Back of the sofa, in a drawer, forgot about it. And the other thing is, right, OK, mobile phones. When I was editing a national newspaper, I had a work mobile phone and I had a personal mobile phone. And believe me, Charlie, I knew where both of them were at any given moment. It was more than my life was worth not to do that. So, I mean, you know, obviously I'm not saying she's not telling the truth. It's just very forgetful.
Multiple occasions is what the Times are reporting now, but the police investigation was just for one. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show because in just under an hour, MPs will vote on assisted dying. For the first time in nearly a decade, the outcome is predicted to be on a knife edge and will be there live. But first, it's your news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 1:30 and the top story this lunchtime. The debate on assisted dying is into its last hour in Parliament, with more than 160 MPs vying for a chance to speak ahead of a historic vote on the end-of-life bill. Supporters, including Labour's Kim Leadbeater, argue it offers a more compassionate approach to end-of-life care.
Most people believe, as I do, that we should all have the right to make the choices and decisions we want about our own bodies. And let's be clear, we are not talking about a choice between life or death. We are talking about giving dying people a choice of how to die.
However, opponents, including Conservative MP Danny Kruger, are warning it could lead to a state suicide service.
And my view is that if we get our broken palliative care system right and our wonderful hospices properly funded, we can do so much more for all the people that we'll hear about today, using modern pain relief and therapies to help everybody die with a minimum of suffering when the time comes. But we won't be able to do that if we introduce this new option.
Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary after Louise Hay stepped down this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until her promotion today. She also worked as Sadiq Khan's Transport Secretary as Mayor between 2018 and 2021. Louise Hay's cabinet resignation followed Sir Keir Starmer's election victory. It is his first resignation from a member of his cabinet, and it came after it emerged last night that Miss Hay was convicted of a criminal offence before she was an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake. Greg Wallace has thanked fans for their support after stepping down from MasterChef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among 13 people making claims accusing him of using sexualised language on the programme in 2011 rather. The production company Banner J UK says it's launching an external review with Wallace, fully cooperating and during the investigation. His lawyers insist, though, the claims are entirely false. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup on all the top stories at 2 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a recap of the markets as they stand this hour. The pound will buy you $1.2689 and €1.2015 euros. The price of gold, £2,099.16 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,275 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A lot of cloud in western areas today, but in the east, some fine and sunny conditions. Still pretty chilly in the east, but it is gradually turning milder. We've got high pressure to the east, low pressure to the west, and these weather fronts are providing thick cloud and outbreaks of rain. Quite a damp afternoon across Northern Ireland. It's been a very wet morning across the Western Isles of Scotland. Further pulses of rain coming in here. Also pretty gusty on the west coast of Scotland. Some rain trickling into Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall also, but for much of the Midlands, Eastern England, Northern England, dry and fine with some hazy sunshine. It is still quite chilly here. Temperatures in single digits. For the west, it's turning milder, but obviously it doesn't feel all that mild with the wind and the rain, which will continue to chug its way across much of Scotland this evening. So quite a damp evening here. Still further pulses of heavy rain to come across the Western Isles and still quite blustery too. The rain, though, clearing from Northern Ireland, so after a soggy afternoon, the evening looking a lot drier. That rain will be working into northwest England, so a wet end to the working week, and some of that rain trickling into parts of the Midlands and clearing away from parts of Wales. Much of eastern England staying largely dry into this evening. Temperature will drop away before the cloud moves in as we go through the evening, bringing a few spots of rain, but not too much rain at all across East Anglia and the southeast. And for much of the night, it'll be dry. It's going to be quite cloudy, a bit misty and murky, especially on some hills, but quite a bit milder than recent nights. Temperatures dropping early in the east, but by morning, most places well above freezing, and indeed in double digits to start the weekend in the west. We are going to have a lot of cloud around on Saturday, but some places, particularly to the northeast of hills, northeastern parts of Wales, northeast England, northeast Scotland, should see some sunny spells. There'll be some showery rain, particularly across in Scotland, but many places will be dry. Still quite breezy, particularly again around western coasts, but much, much milder for all of us. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. Big issues for the M62 this Friday lunchtime. Closed eastbound from junction 20 Rochdale to 24 at Ainley Top. It's due to a lorry fire. Big queues on the approach. 2 other 3 lanes shut westbound to Huddersfield 23 towards Rushworth Moor 22. Now the anti-clock M60 from 16 Pendlebury to the Swinton interchange at 15's queuing. There's a breakdown there. It's currently blocking one of the lanes. Northbound M49 from the M5 up to the M4 closed for emergency repairs. Northbound M11 around Cambridge, 11 up towards 12 closed. Queuing back to Duxford at 10, there's a lorry fire there. And the clockwise M25 still slow approaching South Mims 23. All lanes though back open following a previous collision.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's Good Afternoon Britain on GB News with me, Charlie Peters.
And me, Dawn Neeson, indeed, yes. Dressed festively, but not as an elf. We have more elf news coming up.
Yeah, the elves will come. But
yes.
In the meantime, we've got some your says, some of the comments you've been leaving us on many of the topics we've been discussing today. And one that's really been getting a lot of attention is Louise Hay's resignation. One commenter here, Raymond Carter, pointing out that Louise Hay was a special constable once. So she was in the Metropolitan Police herself for a couple of years.
She was.
And then she was saying that she didn't want to go into a police station to discuss these allegations. Raymond says that she had to go because of that. For what it's worth, Louise Hay has said that she disagreed with the advice of her solicitor at the time to offer no comment when going into the police station for an interview about that. Later was convicted.
But
of
lots of you picking up on what Christopher Hope was saying earlier on, that there is more to come out. I mean, you know, the phone was known about, so what else is there that suddenly makes this a resigning issue?
Sure.
There are allegations of other phones going missing. How does that happen, I wonder? And Paul has said, yeah, she's gone because there are more skeletons in that cupboard.
Yeah.
I do wonder whether there might be a point there.
Well, in other news, Greg Wallace has today thanked fans for their support after stepping down from MasterChef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments from over 17 years ago.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
OK, joining us now is Showbiz journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Hiya, Sarah Louise.
Hi.
What do you make of this? I mean, there's a lot of allegations now, including some very big names. I mean, Penny Lancaster, Rod Stewart's wife, saying that, you know, he basically reduced her to tears.
Yes, Dawn, this is another dark day of scandal, another sex scandal for the BBC. It's already still dealing with the unpleasantness from what happened with Hugh Edwards earlier this year. We saw that scandal there. That's still going on. We had the scandal surrounding Jermaine Jenis, who was the host of the One Show, to do with misconduct. And now Greg Wallace, one of its biggest stars, on a presenter on the show MasterChef. So these allegations span back to 2005, from between 2005 and 2022. It's a 17-year period. What's very interesting is Wallace was reprimanded and was the subject of a BBC HR investigation back in 2018 after two women complaints claiming that he had talked openly about his sex life to staff on the show and made them feel uncomfortable. They said his sexual jokes were disgusting. He would boast about being a good lover and was just completely, deeply inappropriate and made the staff feel very uncomfortable. Now, he was given a warning. He was given a ticking off by the BBC in 2018, yet he was allowed to carry on until this week, when these historic allegations finally came to light in a new Daily Telegraph newspaper investigation, and he has walked away. We've obviously heard his lawyer says he strenuously denies any misdoing, any claims of sexual harassment. He denies that. The BBC have said that they're working with him. There's another investigation ongoing. But you just wonder, why is it the BBC, Dawn, that keeps having these sex scandals? Even Downing Street has waded into this one and said that they found the allegations raised to be deeply concerning. Those were the words of Downing Street today. But they've said it's a matter that they're leaving for the BBC to sort out. But for our, national state broadcaster to be involved in so many of these unpleasant scandals, you just wonder what is going on. There's obviously a problem, isn't there, at the very top of that organisation.
Well, Sarah Louise, we should say quickly now that there's no expectation to say at this point that this is a sex scandal. These are just allegations at this stage about comments. Of course, other issues you're referring to there. Of course, but they are allegations, Sarah Louise. We can't say it is a sex scandal at this stage. Absolutely, that would be inappropriate. But I think you're fair to raise the other concerns there, because there has been this discussion, has there not, about the BBC acting particularly keenly to stamp out any concern as a consequence of those situations with Hugh Edwards, with Jermaine Jenis. And friends of Greg Wallace are saying today that he's been unfairly singled out for a crass style of humour, and that they'd insisted they've never known his behaviour to be malicious. So people defending Greg Wallace here would say it's not a sex scandal. This is, in fact, just a bad sense of humour which has been picked up on a few too many times.
Well, they may say that, and that's very good that he's got loyal friends who have come out in support of them. Fair enough. But I think some of the points that were raised during these complaints, there was allegations made that he walked on set not wearing any clothes and was wearing a sock placed over his genitalia. That was one of the allegations made. So I don't know how you would describe that. But it's obviously a lewd thing to be doing if that is the case, if he did actually do that. And he would boast about going naked under his clothes. And clearly things were raised that made the staff, and not just the staff that were working with him, but also contestants on set. We've heard from Katie Brown today. She said that comments were made. Penny Lancaster, as you pointed out, her husband Rod Stewart's come to her defence and in a very robust statement calling Greg Wallace a bully. Kirsty Walk's also come out and said things, Aggie Mackenzie. So there's a long list of previous Celebrity MasterChef contestants who have said they were aware of this behaviour and did say things at the time, but for whatever reason, it wasn't dealt with or was ignored. I don't know. But anyway, there is obviously something has taken place of some kind, and the BBC is now looking into it and is doing this investigation into it.
Sarah Louise, just very quickly, finally, do you think he'll be able to come back from this?
It depends on the results of the investigation. I mean, going back to Strictly, Giovanni was cleared, so it may be that Greg Wallace, that there's found to be no wrongdoing, and it could be hysteria. And if that's the case, then that would obviously be a conversation between the BBC and the production company and Mr. Wallace himself to decide if back.
Sarah, we have to interrupt. Sarah Louise Robertson, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on the scandal of MasterChef, basically. Now, production company Banjay UK say it's launching an external review with Wallace fully cooperating during the investigation. His lawyer insists the claims are entirely false.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show. We'll be live on the streets of the capital looking for the best Black Friday deals for you. Don't go anywhere, it could save you a few quid.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is some of her delicious hummus. We both love hummus. This is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here. So can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No.
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafaba or water to help with consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top.
That sounds
and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop. for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Happy Black Friday indeed. Shoppers from across the UK are hitting the high streets today to try and snatch some of those Black Friday deals. Over £13 billion was spent in last year's sale, but some consumer experts are suggesting the figure could be beaten in this year's sales. So how can you find the best deals and stay away from rip-offs? We have someone now. I dread to think what's coming up. Right.
That's
okay.
not Jack Carson.
Well, I don't know.
We're meant to cross a Jack Carson.
This is Jack Carson, a GB News reporter, who is looking quite green, it has to be said. Oh, there you are, Jack. Yes.
I thought we'd lost him.
I actually quite like the puppet. Hello, Jack.
Hey, Jack.
How's it going?
Well, this is the boogeyman. Who is helping me out today. So as I've been here in Hamleys today, learning how it is to be an elf, learning what the day job really is as you're an elf in this massive build-up to Christmas. Part of it is meeting and greeting the customers with this little fella. So there we go, this is my new friend, the boogeyman. But as you can see all around me, I'm being attacked here by a monkey, I think. As you can see all around me, just how busy Regent Street here is on Black Friday, and Hamleys as well. We know that retail sales were down by 0.7% last month. Consumer experts saying that a lot of that is actually because people are waiting for days like today, Black Friday, for those best deals to find out where they can save that little bit extra money on their Christmas shopping. We've been speaking to people on Regent Street today, finding out where they are going for those Black Friday deals.
Being savvy, I think, you're taking advantage of probably getting some bargains for Christmas. But I usually work on a Black Friday, so I don't really get to go in and out of the shop so much, but I do take advantage online.
Nowadays, I think we're that clued up about how much things cost. When I was actually looking at some of the prices on Black Friday, they weren't that much different to like how they've been.
You think that you can get some promotion, something, you know, especially technology, you know, like when there's computers and stuff like that.
Depends what the thing is. If it's electronics or something, I often do wait because I think there's big savings to be made.
My partner's more kind of better with these type of things, and I tend to like follow suit. But yeah, I do occasional Black Friday shopping, yes.
Well, there you go. That's what some people have been saying to us. A lot of those people going for the technology deals. Boogeyman, yes. What are you going for? I don't know. I don't know. I might have an air fryer. So there we go. That's what Boogeyman wants for Christmas. Those technology deals are what people, I love them, are what people are going for here, especially across the Black Friday deals, looking for those big cost items that they can maybe save that extra bit of money on. But all down Regent Street today, here in Hamleys, you can see just how many people are coming in here to try and get those deals, try and get those bargains. I mean, we've seen 70% off on some items down here on Regent Street in the windows, 40% off, 30% off. A lot of department stores are bringing in extra staff as well to try and cope with the demand, both, you know, in store and also online. Nearly £2 billion. £2 billion? £2 billion is going to be spent just online today. More than £3 billion. £3 billion is going to be spent overall here in the UK on Black Friday.
Thanks, Jack. I learned a lot about you there in that very short interaction from Hamleys. Thank you for bringing us.
Thank you, Jack. It's not easy being green, evidently.
No, absolutely
or an
not.
elf.
No, it's
I think Jack Carson, our brilliant reporter there, has found his true vocation.
Yeah. Well, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel, the Puppet Show Channel.
Yeah,
as well,
the green puppet channel. This is Good Afternoon
Britain. On GB News, there's lots more coming up on today's show. Don't go anywhere, but first, let's have a look at the weather with Alex.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend at double digits. So as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and as I say, we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south and south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills, so parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine, and even elsewhere we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time. Staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely. Again, fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells. But yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Friday, the 29th of November. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Charlie Peters.
And in just half an hour, MPs will vote on assisted dying for the first time in nearly a decade. The Commons is packed with MPs in a heated debate on this.
Because both pro and anti-assisted dying protesters are currently gathered outside Parliament to make their voices heard as the outcome is predicted to be on a knife edge. We will be there live ahead of the vote in 30 minutes.
Indeed. And Heidi Alexander is appointed the new Transport Secretary following the resignation of Louise Hay, after it was revealed she misled the police a decade ago when she made a false report that her mobile phone had been stolen. We're live on Downing Street covering that story too.
And the BBC says it has robust processes to deal with complaints as Greg Wallace quits MasterChef following claims of misconduct. But the former host has thanked his fans for their support.
I would like to thank all the people getting in touch, reaching out and showing their support. It's good of you.
You know what, the Greg Wallace story is interesting because on screen, him and John Turode, his co-presenter on MasterChef, have a very good relationship, lots of banter, lots of jokes. Off screen, they have nothing to do with one another.
Really?
Even if they go out for like this time of year, like a Christmas meal with the staff, they'll sit at opposite ends of the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Not even a peep. Well, there you go.
It's a very interesting relationship. It just goes to show that maybe there is sort of like, more going on there. Now, I met Greg once and I thought he was charming. I thought he was funny. And lots of people on there are saying, is this just a bit of banter?
Sure, well, he's a core part of the jokes in my family, actually. You often hear him say, what's the story behind the dish when someone brings something to him? We do it in our house. Someone brings over, like, cheese on toast. My mum will ask, what's the inspiration behind this dish? So, at least you've picked up that from us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what do you think? I mean, this show is all about you and your opinions. You have your say on whatever we're talking about, be it assisted dying, Greg Wallace, or Black Friday. gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Dawn, Charlie, thank you very much. 2 minutes past 2. And as we heard at the top of the hour, the debate on assisted dying is intensifying into its last half hour or so, with more than 160 MPs vying for a chance to speak ahead of that historic vote in just minutes. The end-of-life bill, which would allow terminally ill adults in England and Wales to end their lives with the approval of 2 doctors and a High Court judge, has, of course, sparked much division. Supporters, including Labour's Kim Leadbeater, argue it offers a more compassionate approach to end-of-life care.
Most people believe, as I do, that we should all have the right to make the choices and decisions we want about our own bodies. And let's be clear, we are not talking about a choice between life or death. We are talking about giving dying people a choice of how to die.
However, opponents, including Conservative MP Danny Kruger, have warned it could lead to what he called a state suicide service.
And my view is that if we get our broken palliative care system right and our wonderful hospices properly funded, we can do so much more for all the people that we'll hear about today, using modern pain relief and therapies to help everybody die with a minimum of suffering when the time comes. But we won't be able to do that if we introduce this new option.
Heidi Alexander has been appointed as the new Transport Secretary today after Louise Hay stepped down this morning. The MP for Swindon South had been serving as a Justice Minister until that promotion today. The cabinet resignation of Louise Hay was Sir Keir Starmer's first since his election victory, and came after it emerged last night that Louise Hay was convicted of a criminal offence before becoming an MP. She admitted to falsely reporting a stolen work phone in 2013, calling it a mistake, and insists she gained nothing from that incident. Greg Wallace has been thanking his fans for their support after stepping down from MasterChef amid allegations of inappropriate sexual comments over 17 years. Broadcaster Kirsty Walk is among those making claims, accusing him of using sexualised language on the programme in 2011. Production company Banner J UK says it's launching an external review, with Mr Wallace fully cooperating, they say, during the investigation. His lawyers, though, insist the claims are entirely false. In the last hour or so, we have heard that a 25-year-old woman who died in a hit-and-run in Derbyshire has been named now as Alana Armstrong. That crash involving an e-bike and a Land Rover Discovery occurred when the 4x4 rammed the bike that Alana was riding. She was sadly pronounced dead at the scene, while the man she was riding with in his 20s has now had his leg amputated below the knee. 2 people arrested in connection with the incident have been released without charge, while Derbyshire police say they are continuing to search for the driver of the Land Rover Discovery who fled the scene. The Surrey police officer who rammed a cow in a police vehicle will return to frontline duties after an investigation found the action was lawful and necessary. The incident, which saw a 10-month-old calf struck by a police car in Staines-upon-Thames in June, sparked widespread criticism after footage circulated online. Surrey Police's investigation, which included 250 pieces of video footage and more than 70 witness statements, concluded no criminal offences occurred and no further action was required. The officer involved will now return to work with no further misconduct proceedings. London is set to be busier than usual this weekend as pro-Palestine marches clash with Black Friday shoppers and Winter Wonderland festivities. Palestine solidarity demonstrators will march from Park Lane through to Whitehall tomorrow. That marks their 21st protest since Hamas's attack on Israel. Meanwhile, counter-protesters from Stop the Hate will gather near Piccadilly Circus to oppose the march, urging demonstrators to, they say, stop supporting terror. Well, the Metropolitan Police are warning that supporting prescribed terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is a criminal offence and say officers will be visible to ensure public safety. It also comes as Scotland Yard is preparing for one of the busiest shopping weekends before Christmas. And would you believe a banana has been eaten, but not just any banana. No, this one cost a whopping £4.9 million. If I had that much, I'm not sure I'd spend it on a banana, but Chinese-born cryptocurrency entrepreneur Justin Sun certainly did. He's followed through on his promise to eat the fruit from Mauricio Catalan's infamous artwork. Mr Sun bought the duct-taped banana at a Sotheby's auction last week, outbidding 6 other eager banana eaters. And during a press conference in Hong Kong, he compared the art to cryptocurrency, saying it was better than other bananas. The artwork's been eaten twice before, being replaced before exhibitions, but Mr Sun was the first one to pay for the privilege. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for one more update at 2:30.
Welcome back. Well, we are just over 20 minutes away from MPs voting on the assisted dying bill as the controversial legislation enters a critical point.
If successful, the bill could pave the way for terminally ill adults to be given medical assistance in ending their own life. MPs from across the political spectrum are divided on the issue and have been given a free vote from their respective parties to decide themselves whether they support it or not.
Well, let's cross to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who is live in Westminster for us. Catherine, the vote taking place in the next half hour. What's been some of the highlights from the Commons today?
Yes, we're nearing the end of 5 hours of debate. 170 MPs wanting to speak. Many of them won't have been able to because there's a limit of 8 minutes. But some very, very moving speeches from across the political spectrum and on both sides. Kim Leadbeater, whose private member's bill this is, spoke for about 20 minutes at the beginning, detailing some of the horrific deaths that people have suffered and also the suicides. She says that about 500 people kill themselves every year who are terminally ill and want help to die and feel that they've got no choice but to take their own lives. But also Kit Malthouse, who's a strong supporter of that bill. He's a Conservative. But on the other side, many concerns being raised from across the political spectrum. And Florence Eshalomi, a Labour MP, spoke very powerfully and very emotionally in the last hour. Let's just have a look at some of what she had to say.
As a society, we risk pushing people to seek an early death. I cannot in good conscience support this. My late mother lived with chronic illness all her life. And I knew that one day her pain would be too unbearable for her. But she did not let that limit her. She wanted to live. And I believe this bill would protect the wishes. This bill would not protect the wishes of people in her situation today. Because freedom in death is only possible if you have had freedom in life. And I will close by asking this, Madam Deputy Speaker. How can we be possibly satisfied that this bill would deliver equality and freedom in death when we do not yet have this in life?
Yes, so that was one of very emotional speeches. There have been many. It's been really very sobering. Danny Kruger, the Conservative, spoke very powerfully too against this. He said that it will change life and death for everyone if it goes through. Robert Jenrick, Conservative leadership candidate too, he said this law, if passed, will change as a result of judges, and that is one of the main worries that opponents have, that if it is passed, it begins with being for people who are terminally ill. And then very often what's happened is there are legal challenges to broaden it to people that have unbearable suffering. And it then encompasses more and more people. He is saying, mark my words, that will happen. And he says sometimes we have to fetter our freedoms to put the most vulnerable first. Diane Abbott, the mother of the house, also spoke, talking about coercion, saying that that's not something that you can see. Kim Leadbeater says that there will be 2 doctors and a High Court judge that will have to approve this. Diane Abbott says coercion, you won't be able to tell that that is happening. And also talking about protecting vulnerable people from themselves who might feel that they are a burden and that they have a duty to save their family's money to get out of the way. So feelings running very, very high. It's very respectful. And we don't know which way this vote is going to go. There were more people saying they were in support of it than opposed it, so it would seem likely that it will go through. However, there were still a good number of MPs who hadn't said and potentially still making up their minds. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, hasn't said which way he'll vote, but of course he said he would make time. He promised Esther Ranson, who's terminally ill with lung cancer, that he would make time for this bill. He previously voted for it. I think some Labour MPs may be wanting to see in which voting lobby he goes, and I wonder if that might influence some of them who are still wavering. I was bumped into a cabinet minister an hour or so ago, and she was saying she'd literally just made up her mind. She wasn't going to say how, because she said that they had been asked sort of to remain neutral. Of course, Wes Treating and Shabana Mahmood have come out very clearly against this. The Health Secretary and the Justice Secretary, if this goes through, they will be tasked with implementing it.
Catherine, just quickly, we can see the MPs leaving the chamber to vote now. Can you just explain briefly, for those that don't know, how this vote takes place?
Okay, I can't see the screen, but basically everybody will file out, and then there are 2 voting lobbies on either side of the House of Commons. One is for people voting yes, one is for people voting no. So even if you've kept how you're going to vote secret, at the point at which you choose to go in one voting lobby or the other, it becomes clear how you're going to vote. So it'll be very, very interesting to hear when the Prime Minister goes in, because of course this is a free vote. MPs can vote with their conscience, but it's difficult for them. It's a huge, huge decision, literally a matter of life and death. There's hundreds of new MPs. This whole procedure is very new, very different and very difficult for many of them. So when everybody has voted, we will get the ayes and the noes, and then we will know where we are. If it is voted down, The conversation about palliative care you would hope would continue. That seems to be what everyone is united on, the fact that palliative care in this country is simply not good enough. If it is voted through, it will then go to committee. That will be the next stage in the spring. There'll be a third reading. If it's approved, then it will go to the House of Lords. Now, there's plenty of people saying there'll be lots of scrutiny on this. Layla Moran, the Liberal Democrat, was saying to MPs, if you're worried, just vote for it now. You can change your mind later. Others saying this is the critical point. If you cross the Rubicon, as Danny Kruger says, with this vote now, that there will be no going back.
OK, Catherine Forster, our political correspondent in Westminster, as MPs vote on that matter of life and death.
You know, and I think that's so important how that vote happens, because if you're an ambitious young MP and you see your boss going one way, you might be swayed by that on such an important decision.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest public backers of the assisted dying bill has been Esther Rantzen. The broadcaster revealed last year that she had planned to travel to a clinic in Switzerland in order to end her own life after a terminal lung cancer diagnosis. Her daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, says she supports her mother's decision and has outlined why she wants the UK to follow similar law changes in Europe.
Rebecca Wilcox, you're Esther Rantzen's daughter. You feel very strongly about this. First of all, can you tell us why you feel it's so important that this bill passes today?
Well, if this bill passes today, there's obviously a lot more to do. There's a lot more processes to go through. But if it doesn't pass today, then once again, we've said that people don't have a choice at the end of their lives. And I think we should. I think that's absolutely imperative. I think we're a nation of compassionate, kind people. And this bill has compassion and empathy and safeguards as its cornerstones. It couldn't be more carefully set out to protect the vulnerable, to protect those of reduced capacity, but most importantly, to give people choice at the end so they don't have to have a death that leaves their family traumatised and makes them worry for the rest of their lives, however long it is. It's like a sword of Damocles hanging over your head, and to know that you can have that choice at the end is just a wonderful calming balm in a time where nothing helps. And actually, in places where they have an assisted dying bill, it's over a third of people do not take it up, but they just have comfort knowing that they could have it then.
What do you say to people who do worry about the slippery slope, that worry that it could be widened and vulnerable people, elderly people, disabled people might ultimately feel pressured to opt for assisted dying as well?
I would say it was a legitimate worry, but there was a fantastic report that came out earlier this year which showed 14 months of research into assisted dying around the globe. It proved there was no slippery slope. It proved that when you have parameters like the ones that are being set out today, it doesn't open up, it doesn't get wider, that palliative care doesn't get worse, it stays the same, and in some places it gets better. So there's no worry about the fact that we would lose the brilliance of the NHS. I really support the NHS. I think it's one of our most valuable resources, and palliative care, when it works in this country, is gold standard. Of course it's postcode patchy, but it's not an if or, it's an and. You can have assisted dying and brilliant palliative care, and that is shown across the globe, and that report could not have been clearer on it.
At the moment, it seems like you are ahead, but a lot of MPs still to make up their minds. Do you think it's going to go your way today?
I think there are so many unknowns. I think a lot of people want to make the decision in the room. We're asking for choice, so it would be ironic for me to not want people to make their own decisions. But what I would say is, could we all just listen to each other? Listen and be truthful and honest about why we're voting one way and why we're voting the other way. Fact and evidence is really on the side of yes today. So I hope that people make the right choice for choice.
And just finally, the Prime Minister has been quite quiet recently on this, but do you think ultimately he's going to vote for this today?
Well, when Sir Keir Starmer was at the CPS, he was very pro-assisted dying. He always supported people who had accompanied their loved ones to Dignitas, for example, and he understood the need for it. I think that what he's doing is leading by example at the moment, trying to make this a free vote on an MP's conscience, which a lot of other MPs have failed to do, sadly. So I think he's leading by example. And I hope that he will do as he has promised in the past and vote yes for choice. He did promise Mum that this vote would happen. and I just hope that he votes our way.
Rebecca Wilcox, thank you very much for talking to us on GB News. Thank you.
OK, interesting. It looks like the vote is happening very fast, so we're going to go straight back now to the Commons to see what's happening. These are live pictures you can see now. The MPs have all filed out to vote and are now all back in the chamber. So that was remarkably quick, wasn't it, Sean?
Yeah, it was a rapid vote and some quite dramatic speeches in the House of Commons today. We heard Danny Kruger referring to state suicide was his term. Had a point of order from another MP saying that was offensive language, and it comes as over 170 MPs wanted to talk on this extremely important legislation, one of the most major social changes potentially in this country for generations. Other interventions, we saw one independent MP was booed for linking this bill, the assisted dying bill, to the winter fuel allowance cut. That's Adnan Hussain. He's an independent MP for Blackburn. He drew significant objections for that. So a broad and at points quite confusing debate today. As many people have said, this isn't enough time. This is significant.
This is my point. I mean, 170 MPs wishing to speak, literally in a 5-hour debating period, after which they filed out to vote. And this was on a bill that was introduced 3 weeks ago. Something so important needed at least a white paper to have proper debate about it. And Alistair, who's just been in touch on gbnews.com/your say, Alistair says, this is why everyone should be influenced only by the facts and theories, not other people's opinions, because everyone, Charlie, has a very emotive story about what losing a loved one. I lost my own dad to lung cancer. I sat by the side of his bed as he died in incredible pain. Everybody has a very emotive story about this, but it has to be about the facts. And my questions are, have they had long enough to debate this properly? And basically, is this going to be run properly by the judicial system and the NHS in this country? Mistakes are made.
And Dawn, just in this programme, we've heard some more of those very emotive testimonies. Tanni Gray-Thompson saying that she would feel vulnerable if this law was passed. Also, disability campaigner George Fielding said that he feared a two-tier system. And we're standing by now for the Speaker to speak to us. I think we can cross to him now.
Order. The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 275. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. And look!
Well, there you have it. Kim Leadbeater's bill has passed its second reading in the Commons with a majority of 55. MPs have backed assisted dying. The second reading has been approved. And let's hear now from Kim Leadbeater there.
Under Standing Order number 63(2), I must now put the question forthwith. The question is that the Public Bill Committee, to which the terminally ill end-of-life bill stands committed, shall have the power to send for persons, papers and records. And many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Under Standing Order number 632, only one motion relating to the committal of the bill may be moved, and that has been done. Right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to the Farage bill first, if people wish to leave.
Wow.
That is a close vote. You've just seen it there live. 330 MPs voted yes to Kim Leadbeater's bill. 275 voted against. So for the first time, a decade, I think, is it? Since the previous debate on this, assisted dying has been voted through. And that's despite 62% of people in this country believing that the bill is too complex and too polarised to be held this quickly.
Well, Dawn, there is still a lot of parliamentary process to go. This is just the second reading, but it is a significant majority of 55. And as we've been talking about all afternoon, this is a major moment in Britain's social laws, just how we understand life and death. There's still a long time to go in this, but this is a turning point, the first time that the Commons has voted for assisted dying. It will now go for that third reading. It's passed at this stage, and we're going to expect some quite broad reaction to that, of course. Many of the people voting for it, I think, were quite optimistic ahead of this vote. They did anticipate this to come on, but it was silent when that vote came in, not a pin drop.
Which is unusual for the House, because normally it is like a chimps tea party most of the time, isn't it? But a lot of respect hearing this through. So the Terminally Adults Bill, End of Life Bill, that's what it is technically called. It sets out a legal and medical framework for when that right may be exercised. But there are deep-seated judicial concerns. The bill states that mentally competent adults with less than 6 months to live and expressing a clear and settled and informed wish to die may ask for assistance. If two doctors and a High Court judge agree, that patient will be then given an approved substance with which to end their life. Let's go back to Catherine Forster now to bring us up to date on this. Well, it was very close, but it's gone through. Catherine.
Yes, hello. Well, I don't think it's possible to really overstate what's just happened here in Westminster. MPs have made history. They have voted to legalise assisted dying. Now, Kim Leadbeater, who brought this private member's bill, she says there are the world's strictest safeguards in place. She says that it is for adults only who have less than 6 months to live, that it must be approved by 2 doctors and a High Court judge. We'll come back to that in a minute, but just the numbers. So the ayes, those in favour, 330, the noes, 275, a majority of 55. Feelings on all sides have been very raw today and for weeks, people telling their personal stories. Of course, all of us know somebody who has died, have our own stories, whether of a good death or a bad death, and we've heard very many of those today. Esther Rantzen, of course, got a promise from the Prime Minister to make time for this to be heard. Kim Leadbeater was selected and she chose this topic. They will be absolutely over the moon. There's lots of people wearing pink from the Dignity in Dying campaign who will be thrilled that terminally ill people will now be able to get the help of a doctor to end their suffering. But there will be many, many others who are very concerned about what this means, because what we have seen in many other countries is it begins with terminally ill with a fairly narrow parameter and then it is broadened. Robert Jenrick, the former Justice Secretary, warning that he said this law, if passed, will change as a result of the judges. Many people saying that it will be open to challenge by lawyers, because people who are suffering from terrible conditions that are not actually going to kill them but have unbearable suffering will say that it's discriminatory against them, will mount legal challenges, and then that the bill will be broadened. Now, Kim Leadbeater says that that will not happen. She cites Oregon as a case in point that have had a similar laws for 25 years. I would say there's some dispute about that not having broadened in Oregon. For instance, if you are anorexic or have a hernia or something, there have been instances in Oregon of people being given an assisted death. Lots of concerns too about coercion, about elderly people, disabled people, vulnerable people feeling like a burden. So lots of questions that will all be picked up now in committee stage, which will take place in the spring. Many MPs were saying, if you have concerns, we'll deal with this down the line. This is just the beginning. Others are worried that it hasn't had sufficient scrutiny and that we have now basically passed a point of no return. But a huge, huge moment.
Catherine, obviously there's been significant discussion all day on this, but with this passing, a majority of 55, what's the next stage for this bill? Because this is a yes on principle from the Commons, but there's still a lot of procedure to follow. What's next for this bill now?
Yeah, so next is committee stage. That committee, Kim Leadbeater, it's her bill. She will have a big say in choosing who is on that committee. They will look at it in detail, depending on who you talk to. Some say huge detail, there'll be lots of scrutiny. Other people say that is not the case with a private member's bill. Then there'll be a report, there will be third reading. That will be the next chance for MPs to vote on it, and it's possible they might have a change of heart at that point, though I don't think so. And then, of course, it will go to the House of Lords. In the meantime, I would imagine that an impact assessment will have to be done, and that's been one of the main criticisms. Ordinarily, you would have an impact assessment done in advance of a vote like this, which would have weighed up how this would work in practice, what the impact would be, what the costs would be. That has not been done. So Wes Treating, the Health Secretary, has already ordered a review of how this is going to affect the NHS. Of course, it's going to mean a lot of work for them, and also the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, will have to look at how this will work legally. It's worth saying that both of those ministers came out against this bill, so a lot of controversy. There will be many people absolutely delighted, convinced that this is the right result, that it will put terminally ill people in charge of their own end, but there'll be others who think that we have taken a really very serious step in the wrong direction. Danny Kruger, the Conservative MP, said it will change life and death for everyone. Robert Jenrick said that it wasn't a cliff edge so much as, it wasn't a slippery slope so much as a cliff edge. He said that MPs would leave here and step out into a different country where people would have different conversations around the dinner table, different conversations on walks about their loved ones.
Catherine, this government don't seem to cover themselves in glory when it comes to impact assessments. They didn't do one on the winter fuel payment. They didn't do one on the inheritance tax on farmers. So how much of an impact assessment they do on this bill is another matter. But how quickly could this happen? What is the quickest this bill could actually now pass into law?
Realistically, we're probably looking at least a couple of years. So Esther Ranson, who's campaigned so much on this, has said that this won't be in time for her. These things do not move fast, and the committee stage for this bill, where are we now, end of November, will be in the spring. These things do move slowly, so probably a couple of years. And it could fail at the third reading. It could fail in the Lords. I think it's highly unlikely, though, so I think what's just happened has set us on a path in which the NHS and doctors can take active steps to end people's life with their permission. Diane Abbott, the mother of the house, gave quite a moving speech talking about coercion. Kim Leadbeater says that it protects against this, the bill, but Diane Abbott was saying coercion can be what you don't say. She's saying it's not possible to detect that. And she said that the NHS would become a fully funded suicide service, while palliative care was funded at 30% at best, because of course we know that palliative care, hospices and so on don't get terribly much money from central government. A lot of them have to raise money through hospice shops, through charity work. So I think there will need to be a lot of work done now, the Health Secretary, the Justice Secretary and elsewhere, but a huge change has been set in motion in the last few minutes, one that does have consequences potentially for all of us.
Let's discuss the politics of this, because, of course, as you've mentioned, the Justice Secretary and the Health Secretary both signalled they were not going to vote for this bill. They opposed it. And we also heard Dame Esther Ranson saying that Wes Streeting had disappointed her in his stance. Is there now, do you think, going to be some political fighting, perhaps, on the Labour front bench as a consequence of this bill passing and the two people needing to implement it being opposed?
Well, apparently the Prime Minister was disappointed at the interventions of the Justice Secretary and the Health Secretary. Ministers had, of course, been told to be sort of neutral and careful in what they said. I think it is worth saying, however, that although the Prime Minister himself has been very guarded, has kept his cards very close to his chest since this bill, since it was announced that it was happening, we do know that he made a promise to Esther Ranson, that we do know that he'd made a promise that this issue would be voted on in Parliament, and we also do know that he voted for assisted dying in 2015. So I think for all that he might be unhappy that Wes Streeting and Shabana Mahmood spoke out, I think there are questions about how neutral the Prime Minister has been in all this, and I do wonder if some of the wavering Labour MPs, many of whom are new, who haven't been in Parliament long, this is a huge decision, might have looked at which voting lobby the Prime Minister went into and been influenced. Perhaps with that. That is why he said he hasn't spoken recently, didn't want to influence people.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for that live from Westminster there after this historic vote has passed.
Yeah, and lots of you are getting in touch. GBNews.com/your say. It's really important that you have your say. Divided opinion. Steve says this is the correct decision. Meanwhile, Rita says, Kim Leadbeater, how can you sleep at night for bringing this bill forward? So a lot of debate there. Please keep your views coming on. Now we can bring in the consultant and former British Medical Association member, Dr. Philip Howard, who is against the bill, and the political commentator, Danny Shaw, who is for it. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to come to you first, Philip. What do you make of this vote today?
This is a catastrophic change. This is not going down the slippery slope. This is going over the precipice. It is a complete contradiction of the Hippocratic tradition, which can be summed up in one sentence. I will give no deadly drug to any, nor will I counsel such. We have now turned the corner, and we will give deadly drugs to bring about, cause the death of our patients, and we will counsel such.
You sound actually quite personally upset by this.
I am very upset, and I think it would be very difficult for any doctor or nurse who has been involved in this to wake up and to think that they have caused the death of a patient. Not that they've died in difficult circumstances, not that the things have gone wrong, but they have deliberately, consciously, knowingly caused the death of a patient or patients. I think they would find that very difficult to live with. And I think the MPs will have that on their minds as well. They have authorised this. This will cost hundreds of lives per week.
Would you refuse to do it?
I would refuse to do it. And I think what doctors and nurses will have to do is to declare whether or not they will go along with this, if ever it gets passed into legislation, or not. Are you prepared to take the lives of your patients or not?
And Danny, you're a supporter of this bill. You've just heard those statements, but of course there are many people who will be feeling great relief at the passing of this vote. Doctors as well. Many of those people in that profession also support this move. What's your reaction to that vote?
Well, I'm pleased that MPs have voted in favour of it, and I think it's a fairly healthy majority, I think of over 50, 55, something like that. So it wasn't quite as tight as people were forecasting, although clearly a number of MPs didn't vote for whatever reason. I think this is the right step. I completely respect other points of view. I know that there are very strong emotions on both sides, but I think the time is right to pass this legislation. This is the first step in the process, and it's really important. And I think Kim Leadbeater was absolutely correct to say we're going to have a proper process, a thorough process. We're going to examine this bill with the concerns around safeguards and so on in committee stages. And she said it would be at least 2 years before the bill will be implemented. And I think that's right. That gives everyone time to take stock, to look at it. So there's going to be that process of debate. I hope the government will engage in that and make the sort of resources necessary to be able to do that in terms of an impact assessment, so we can see what effect that will have on resources and so on. So the first step, the right step, historic moment, but let's take things one step at a time to make sure that if this bill passes, that it does so in the right way, and with the right safeguards in place that are practicable and that can be put into effect.
Well, Danny, we've just heard that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves voted in favour of this bill, so it's got their backing now publicly. You've spent your whole career covering criminal justice, the police, the law. How confident are you that these changes now to the law will be followed up appropriately by the safeguards required to ensure people aren't coerced into an early death? Because that's what people are really concerned about on the other side, aren't they? You're an expert in this area, having covered it for many decades. Are you nervous at all about those safeguards and whether or not they'll protect people from coercion?
Well, I think that's why we have to have the debate over the coming months, and we have to scrutinise the detail in committee, and we have to hear from experts about the safeguards and doctors, and we have to hear from judges and so on to see how it will work in practice. But it's not impossible. It's absolutely doable. You know, we've done many difficult things and passed many difficult acts of parliament on tricky issues and made them work. We can make this work. And so, of course, there may be odd instances where concerns are raised. But if the safeguards are in place, then I believe that those will be minimised.
Can I just interrupt here? When you say odd incidences, Philip, coming back to you and what you said, which I thought was quite emotional, odd incidents could be someone losing their life when they don't need to lose their life. Do you think the language is maybe... I mean, these are people's lives and families we're talking about here. Do you think the odd incidences of people potentially being murdered?
Well, one of the worrying things is, of course, that it's not necessarily done through your normal GP or doctor. It can be done through another doctor and an expert who may not know you at all. And it doesn't, if you look at the detail of it, take into account that there may be family members who have got very strong views that that is not the wishes of the patient. And that has certainly been the case in other legislations, where the doctor who has normally looked after the patient is able to tell the judges that that is not the case. It's not what they would have wanted.
Gentlemen, stay with us, please. I mean, we're going to go back to the House now. We have Catherine Forster with some more information on the story. Catherine.
Yes, good afternoon. Well, I'm joined now by Chris Curtis. He is Labour MP for Milton Keynes North since July. Chris, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. You voted in favour, but when did you decide, and why do you think that this is the right decision for the country?
Well, I've been making up my mind over the course of the last week. We came to a firm decision only this morning. And the reason it's taken me so long is because I really wanted to engage with as many people as I can, both across the constituency. So I held 2 town hall events last weekend to speak to people with differing views, different experiences, and make sure that fed into the decision-making processes. And look, I've always been open-minded on the issue. I always am side, but I wanted to make sure that those safeguards are in place. So speaking to people, speaking to lawyers, speaking to other members of Parliament, speaking to different community groups, to make sure that I feel confident that the safeguards are in place, and eventually I was, and that's why I decided to support the legislation.
But suggestions from some people, Diane Abbott, one of your own MPs, that coercion is something that you can't prove, that it will be something which is unseen, and that the judges will simply be rubber stamping. She and many others are very worried about vulnerable people feeling like a burden. How do you guard against that?
Look, I think that there's lots of protections in the legislation in order to protect against situations like that. Everything needs to be signed off by medical experts and by judges who will be looking into this, and it can only happen in the last 6 months of somebody's life, which is one of the many things that mitigates against that risk. Look, it's incredibly difficult. It's an incredibly difficult moral decision that we've all had to come to today, balancing off those difficult arguments either way. But my view is, from speaking to so many people who are going through such suffering at the end of their life, and we're elected to this place to give people the best possible life, and I think we also should be working to give people the best possible death as well, and that's what this legislation works to do.
Chris Curtis, thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon. So that's just one of several hundred MPs who has voted in favour of this massive, massive change. We'll bring you more reaction shortly, but back to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, we're back in the studio here with consultant and former British Medical Association member Dr. Philip Howard, who's against the bill, and political commentator Danny Shaw, who supports it. We've just heard there in that interview from one of the MPs who backed it. And Danny, when you hear that sort of statement, you hear the support that is reflected in the voting, this is a seismic change in British medical law.
Yes, absolutely. It's a historic moment. But I would just caution people, we're still at the first stage of this. The bill has still got to go through committee stages, other debates. It'll have to go to the House of Lords as well. And, you know, the bill can be gone through line by line to make sure that those safeguards are absolutely rock solid and that it's workable. So, you know, it's a really great moment. It's a moment of principle. I think this is long overdue. You know, there are other countries, the United States, I think 10 states and Washington, D.C. have some kind of law like this. We know that there are a number of European countries too. Australia, New Zealand, Canada have similar laws. I think we are now falling into step behind them, and rightly so. But let's get it right and let's learn the lessons from those other countries.
Can I just read out this comment from Sir James Mumby, former head of the High Court's Family Division? He says judges are meant to weigh up all the facts of a case before delivering their judgment, yet they would not be required to question the patient or interview their family. So there is no right of appeal for relatives, no contingency for the approved substance failing to work, and the whole process is shrouded in secrecy. In short, this is going to be defective. That's what he says. He says, you know, normally as a judge, I would be able to interview people to investigate the case. I'm just going to rubber stamp someone's death.
Well, this is something that can be addressed in the stages. The bill is really in its embryonic stage at the moment. And we've seen before with other pieces of legislation, they go through Parliament and they are made better when they go through Parliament. And so his views and those of others will be reflected in that process. And I'm sure it can be made so that if a judge wants to question the patient or relatives or the doctors involved, they will be able to do so.
Philip, I just want to come back to you on this one. Just had a message from one of our viewers, a lady called Jane. She is saying this is the wrong decision. The assisted dying bill is legal murder. The NHS killed my mum last week. Now the government has made it legal. I don't know the full details of what happened with her mum, but one element that a lot of people are mentioned on here is the do not resuscitate orders, which many people do not approve. They wake up with that literally on the end of the bed. The family haven't approved it. I mean, that's worrying. This makes it even more worrying.
Yes, I think one of the things that we don't often do as doctors, we should do it all the time, is to remember those that have died. The families of relatives do. And when things go wrong, they remember it for years. They remember it for the rest of their life. They share it with other members of the family. And they can then go back and they remember hour by hour the last few days of that person's life. Now, if they have a bad death, that is remembered. If, on the other hand, they have a good death and they are well looked after by their doctors and nurses, they remember that. So she has got a very valid point.
Philip, I'm just hearing now that Rishi Sunak was one of the 23 Tory MPs who voted in favour of this bill, so that's another political update on this. You heard from Danny just before we went back to Westminster saying that there's many more months now, potentially up to 2 years, for this bill to be passed, where there'll be committee stage, further debates. How confident are you about the safeguards that are going to be put in place here? Do you have any degree of confidence that people will be protected from coercion as someone who opposes the bill?
Well, I'd have to be brief, but you have a High Court judge who is making a declaration early on. If the death is accepted, that's it. If it's not accepted, then there may be an appeal. If it is accepted, it goes ahead. Now, where in law do we have that situation where you can only appeal one way? If the decision of the High Court judge is that the person's life should end, it ends. And then when you come back and review the so-called safeguards, you have got a High Court judge who has made a decision which cannot be overturned. How can there be safeguards? And the other obvious point is that the primary victim is dead. Who is going to advocate for them?
Would you like to respond?
Well, I mean, this is something, again, that can be addressed through the stages, but it could well be that you put in a right to appeal against a decision to certify the assisted dying, and that if people who have a particular interest in that case can appeal against it, they can do. But it can't just be a right of appeal for anyone and everyone. It has to be people who are actually connected to that case. So if a relative has a real concern that the person has been coerced, let's say by another relative, and doctors have certified it, judges certified it, perhaps they should then have a right of appeal in those sorts of circumstances. I don't see anything wrong with having that built into it.
But you had an appeal against capital punishment.
Sorry, expand on what you mean by
that.
You
had an appeal against capital punishment. Sure. If somebody was convicted of murder and they were going to be sentenced to hanging, I'm glad that we no longer have that, there was a right of appeal. As the law now stands, as the bill now proposes, there is no appeal once the judge has decided that the patient may die.
Well, Philip and Danny, we're going to go back to Westminster now because Catherine Forster is there, I believe, with Layla Moran. Catherine, who have you got with you?
Yes, I'm joined by Layla Moran, Liberal Democrat, of course, MP for Oxford, West and Abingdon. She's also chair of the Health and Social Care Committee. Layla, thank you so much for talking to us this afternoon. You spoke in the Commons earlier. Tell me how you feel about this result and what it will mean.
So I voted for today. And of course, I'm pleased that we are moving to the next stage. And that's what today's vote was about. This is not a, are we doing this or not vote? That's the third reading. It comes much later. Today's vote for me was about, do we continue this important conversation? It's a vote on the principles. So I believe that at the end of life, where death is coming, and this is very important to say. There were some saying that this is about having state-sponsored suicide and things like that. Actually, we need to remember this is only for terminally ill adults, and it's about how they die, because they are already going to die, and that's a really important distinction. So the way I feel about this, well, first of all, I thought this was a great debate. I thought it was really interesting, the different views, the way people brought in their personal experiences, their professional experiences, all the different facets of all the issues were brought in. And did you see how many MPs stayed to listen to the whole thing and really engage with it? That's fantastic. And the result is clear, 55 majority. But I would also say it is incumbent, especially on those of us who vote for, to take those concerns incredibly seriously. So I'm pleased we're moving to the next stage. This, by the way, is the stage where the government now gets involved, or at least the department. They need to now engage with the bill. They need to make sure it's workable. They'll be working with the bill committee to make sure they do that. We've been assured that it's not just going to be yes people on the bill committee, that they will include voices of dissent, and that's incredibly important. And I want to continue having this conversation in the country. It's past time that we have it place at the end. But I will say, if we don't iron out some of the bigger issues, then I'm going to potentially vote no. And every MP now still has that right. It is not over yet, it's just begun.
One of the main concerns seemed to be that often in other countries it's began with people who are terminally ill and then legal challenges to encompass people with unbearable suffering broaden it out. What is to say that couldn't happen here? Because Parliament is sovereign, of course, but lawyers may take a very different view of people's human rights on this.
I would imagine it will be tested in the courts. And what we've seen when things like this in this country, and every country has a different judicial system, then they have said it's a matter for Parliament. And I would hope that they would continue to adhere to that. Now, the way the bill is drafted is also very clever, because those examples that people point to, the slippery slopes in the judiciary, were drafted differently. They would mention things like suffering. The word suffering does not appear in this bill. It also has specific exclusions for disabled people and people with mental ill health. So that's already kind of been taken into account. The Health and Social Care Select Committee in the last Parliament, led by Steve Brine, did a report on this, and what they found was that actually in many jurisdictions that slippery slope simply doesn't happen.
Layla Moran, thank you very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon on GB News. Back to you in the studio.
very much, Catherine, and thanks very much to consultant and former British Medical Association member Dr. Philip Howard and the political commentator Danny Shaw. Gentlemen, thank you very much for contributing to a very important show today. And thank you for watching Good Afternoon Britain. But don't go anywhere, as Martin is up next, where he will continuing this live-breaking story, as you heard earlier. 330 MPs have voted yes to assisted dying. 275 have voted no. Martin will be continuing this live-breaking story for you. Don't go anywhere. But before that, let's have a look at what weather's doing for you.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's going to be a pretty mild weekend. Don't expect a huge amount of sunshine, but don't expect much rain either. Certainly tomorrow, most places will be dry. Far from dry out there, though, this evening, a line of rain crossing England and Wales, kind of fizzling out as it does so, but pretty wet again across western Scotland, particularly over the Western Isles. Been a blustery old day here as well. Those winds easing a touch through the night, but enough of a breeze and certainly enough cloud to keep the temperatures up. It'll turn quite chilly this evening with clearer skies across the east, but by morning we're up to 6-7 degrees Celsius, and in the west we'll start the weekend at double digits. So as I said, it will be a mild weekend. Predominantly cloudy, certainly to begin with, and still a bit of rain around across parts of Scotland. The overnight rain should be shimmering away from Shetland quite early on. There'll be a few showers coming into parts of the west of Scotland, but generally it'll be a dry start, largely dry too for Northern Ireland, and so we start the weekend here in double digits, as we do across much of Wales. A lot of clouds smothering England and Wales, but with the winds coming up from the south, south-southwest, we'll see some breaks in the clouds to the northeast of hills, so parts of northwest England, northeast Wales, northeast England and northeast Scotland should do okay for some brightness, some sunshine, and even elsewhere we should see some glimmers of brightness. The cloud will break up from time to time, staying mostly cloudy in the far west with a few showers coming through, but many areas dry. And look at the temperatures, double digits across the board, much, much milder than it has been. Some places climbing into the teens. Sunday, again, very mild. A bit more rain around on Sunday. This line of rain moving from west to east slowly but surely. Again, fizzling out as it gets to eastern parts of England. More showery rain then coming back into Scotland later on. There'll be a bit more in the way of brightness coming through, so some sunny spells. But yes, a few more outbreaks of rain on Sunday compared to Saturday. But again, generally on the mild side with temperatures in double figures. Northerly winds just creeping into northern Scotland, though, turning colder next week.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or GB